Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel. My ex-girlfriend is everywhere, all female Avengers are shocked. Chapter 81. Are we waiting here? John, who was agitated in his heart, couldn't help being the first. What's the point of this? We are not here to watch the show tonight. Don't worry, just like the boss said, let the guy in the black tights look for mines in the front. Wouldn't it be better for us to sit in the back and reap the benefits? Deadpool spoke casually, and then the expression on the back of the holster changed for a while. Who is pushing me behind me? You too. Oh, it's the hilt, Blade Warrior, put your hilt away. I almost thought yours was so thick. The Blade Warrior's already black face can't be black anymore. If it weren't for being controlled by others, how could he act with an idiot, a child? According to his character, he would have rushed in and cut. Okay, it's almost done inside, let's go in. Deadpool listened to it with a strange-looking instrument, he laughed, and rushed in with two people. Coming from the top of the hospital to the slaughterhouse not far away, John's anger was completely ignited. He couldn't imagine that such a tragic thing happened here. The experienced Deadpool quickly recognized the type of ribs in front of him. They do not belong to cows, horses, pigs and sheep, but come from humans who are no different from them. Vampires used to cremate corpses, but now it seems that they have found a way to create more economic benefits. Blade opened his mouth, a gloomy face that seemed to drip water. Faced with such cruel things, John, who had never seen such a cruel scene, couldn't help it for the first time. A feeling of nausea went straight to his throat, and the little guy almost didn't vomit it out. This small slaughterhouse is a place to work for ordinary people during the day, but at night it is a paradise for vampires to enjoy themselves. I don't know how many ghosts are hidden in a seemingly ordinary place, but as a person, I can't ignore the actions of these vampires. According to Blade's arrangement, I will take the lives of these vampires to pay tribute to the dead. Joe Luo's cold command came from the headset, and Deadpool knew that the boss who saw everything here through the miniature camera on his shoulder was also angry. When the three of them approached the vampire's base, there was already a terrifying cry of killing. Wow, it seems that our kid is really motivated, Deadpool said as he drew the knife he was carrying. Blade on the side also drew out his own weapons, and the two people holding similar weapons couldn't help but glance at each other, suddenly feeling a little bit of comparison in their hearts. John waved his hand, and the small device installed on his arm immediately ignited a small flame which he controlled in the palm of his hand. His ability is to control fire, but he can't make fire out of thin air, so he needs the assistance of small instruments. These vampires, I want them to taste the scorch. The flame in John's hand swelled suddenly, and he screamed and rushed in. Wait kid, the boss said that little Spider-Man is in a dangerous state now, you are careful to get hurt by mistake. Deadpool, who had a million heart, rushed in quickly, worrying that the reckless John would be injured. But after rushing in, both of them couldn't help but froze for a while. Are these all vampires? Looking at the people in front of him, John was a little uncertain. According to Blade's intelligence, there are hundreds of vampires here, but the number in front of them is too much, roughly estimated to be no less than 300. 90% of them are, and some are idiots who have been tempted over. They should be snacks prepared by vampires. Blade coldly looked at the little Spider-Man, who was drowned in vampires. Although he was strong, he couldn't let go of his hands and feet in this small place, and couldn't get out of him for a while. That's it. Then let's kill. Deadpool didn't bother to take care of it. Ordinary humans were so scared that they were screaming at this time, and the rest was no matter what he was, the killing was over. Turning his head to stare at a not weak breath, Deadpool was about to do it. However, the Blade on the side was faster than him. Gunshots suddenly sounded amidst the stimulating music, and a vampire was killed directly after being hit by a silver bullet. Wow, are the visual effects so cool? Joe Luo, who saw this scene through the camera, couldn't help but exclaimed. It seems that Blade, a vampire hunter, is really not a silly name. I don't know if these weapons are effective for the Karen family. Joe Luo felt his chin and thought for a while. Although the Karen family members are few, they are all abnormal. It is not that simple to deal with. It is definitely not the Karen family that he wants to deal with, but another vampire family with the same name as the Karen family, the Voturi family. Don't be so surprised, it's the same if you watch too much. He pulled the trigger again and again, and Blade pushed it horizontally in an absolutely hawkish attitude, saying that it was a 10 kill in one step. Vampires are especially good at playing because of their long lifespan. What to order at a party, it's just like eating home-cooked meals. What's more, they also repelled the famous vampire hunter not long ago. Such a victory contributed to their pride to a certain extent. In the beginning, little Spider-Man was able to attack here without hindrance, and it was inseparable from their brain-dead behavior. It's Daywalker, kill. The vampires have already been red eyes by little Spider-Man's visit. Hey, darlings, try this. Taking a daylight grenade from Blade's waist, the vampires that Deadpool was facing were just lost, and in an instant, a dozen vampires who hadn't evaded in time disappeared. This is so cool. Taking a look at his own results, Deadpool swung his knife into the front, like a tiger into a flock. The silver weapon's restraint against this kind of vampire is simply to die if touched, and to hurt if you rub it. Combined with Deadpool's crazy style of playing that doesn't care about his injuries, it instantly makes him a meat grinder-like existence. Behind him, John followed Deadpool, and the raging flames burned all vampires who dared to approach into moving torches. Perhaps because of anger, this young man's power exploded abnormally. Blade is behind the back hall, on the one hand to protect John, on the other hand to clear the tail and observe the battlefield situation. He knows that the protagonist tonight is not him, and everything is under the watchful eyes of the boss, so it is better for him to be obedient. Tisk tisk, such a bloody scene, it's like watching a plasma film without mosaic. Joe Luo looked at the plasma on the screen flying all over the sky, and couldn't help shook his head. It's really a right decision to recruit young men. Otherwise, I have to clean them myself. Wouldn't it be exhausting to me? On the other side, the little Spider-Man who shared the pressure broke out because of being mixed by the three of Deadpool, and found Deadpool in them. Although he amplified some of the negative emotions in his heart because of the Venom battle suit, he did not lose his mind, knowing that two fists are hard to beat four hands, and they quickly rendezvoused towards Deadpool. At this moment, there was a sound of footsteps behind everyone, and a group of heavily armed guys rushed in. Human. Joe Luo, who watched the video, frowned, then relieved that he had expected the scene in front of him. He asked John to follow along this time, and he brought little Spider-Man over again, which might have allowed them to gain insight and understand the meaning of social darkness. Justice is a very ambiguous, extreme, and easy-to-use term. Its concept has been changing with the differences of individuals, countries, and even different ideological positions. Yang Rui would not admit that he still had the meaning of bending the little Spider-Man's thoughts and tying him to his chariot. Dogs of the Hagi tribe who want to live forever. Glancing at the visitor with disdain, Blade looked familiar, obviously no stranger to it. In a sense, Blade is a double-edged sword in the hands of human beings. It needs others to have it, and people who can't wait to destroy him more. What did you do when you encountered this situation in the past? As he hit, Deadpool yelled back in time. What to do? Either bring them down, or be brought down by them. Blade started to kill as he spoke. The bullets in his hand had been exhausted, and he was now using a sword. Okay, what a great idea. Deadpool pushed back a group of vampires, and was about to say that there was a kid who hadn't experienced much battle, but Joe Luo's order came from the headset. Reluctantly spreading his hands, Deadpool shouted to John, "Hey, boy, it's time for you to show your hand. The boss said that you will kill all those heavily armed guys." John's face turned red. He could kill vampires with anger, but he used his ability to harm humans, which made it unacceptable for John, who had always received the kind and loving education of Professor X. After all, he is not the Burning Man who will follow Magneto in the South and North Wars in the future, but just a hairy boy who has just left school. Listen, baby, I know it's hard for you, but it's a trial. Deadpool tried to give John a little psychological comfort. When you face a group of guys with guns and live ammunition, if you don't want to put them down, then you have to think about covering a hole in your body and crying. Oh, I'm talking about gun eyes. After being ridiculed by Deadpool, John seemed to have suddenly let go of some psychological burden and waved his hand violently. The surrounding flames converged into two fire dragons, and rushed into the crowd. Wow, cool. Deadpool couldn't help blowing a whistle, and exploded in the head of a man screaming in the flames. Don't thank you buddy for helping you eliminate the pain. Wow, in some ways, my character is as pure as God. Be careful behind you, Deadpool. Joe Luo's calm reminder sounded in his ears. Deadpool was about to turn his head and felt a pain in his back. A hard as iron claw pierced his chest. Everyone was stunned by this scene, so that both the vampire and the blade stopped fighting for a while. It's you. You're not dead. There was some surprise in Deadpool's voice. The guy in front of him should have been killed by him a few days ago. How did you survive? Daywalker, where do you come from the confidence that you can kill a vampire count? The vampire ridiculed him and brought Deadpool, who was still twitching constantly, in front of him. Deadpool's heart was caught in his hands. In his eyes, this guy was dead. In the past you deceived me to be weak, now I want to unscrew your head as a wine glass. After speaking, he opened his mouth wide and stretched out two fangs towards Deadpool's neck. Gotcha. The sensation of the sharp fangs penetrating the carotid artery did not come from the imagination, but instead bit into the extremely hard metal. Surprise mother FXXK. Deadpool blocked his mouth with a pistol. A little joke flashed in his eyes. Taste the explosion in your mouth. With a bang, the bullet passed through the back of the vampire Earl's head, leaving a big hole in the bowl. Deadpool kicked it away. As he retreated, the bloody hole in his chest was quickly repaired. Nice job, John yelled in excitement, raising his hand with a flurry of flames to catch up with the Count Dracula and creme it. Get out of here. The vampire count, with a big hole in his head, suddenly let out an inhuman scream. Then a large number of bats quickly gathered here. The dark clouds are pressing down on the realm, and countless bats are attacking in piles. However, in the blink of an eye, everyone was surrounded by these little animals, and the vampire count took advantage of this opportunity to quickly escape. Don't want to go. Little Spider-Man waved his hand, and a spider web caught a small bat. On the other side, John sprayed a large fire like a mobile flamethrower, and the bats in the sky fell like rain. Compared with the two young men, the two predecessors performed poorly. Whether it was a pistol or a knife, the efficiency of killing bats was touchingly low. But they still wasted some time cleaning up the bats. When the four got out, the vampire count had already escaped. Let him run away. Blade's brow furrowed fiercely. This time the opportunity was so good. Without leaving the vampire count, there will only be more trouble in the future. Run. No, wait a minute. Deadpool helped the headset. Yes, boss, let's act now. Upon receiving the order, Deadpool grinned at everyone. The boss has locked the escape route of that little bat, and he has nowhere to escape. That's great, let's go. Blade's eyes lit up, and he was impatiently ready to leave. Wait a minute, a little Spider-Man in black came over there. Guys, I'm Spider-Man. Oh, I know you, a good neighbor in New York. I'm Deadpool, do you want to mess with us? No, not with you. Spider-Man was a little dissatisfied with Deadpool's tone. I can work with you to kill those vampires. Cooperate together. This seems to be a good idea too. Deadpool didn't care. Anyway, he was acting according to Joe Luo's instructions, and he only needed to get the money, so much care. On the other side, Joe Luo slowly stood up and opened the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the brightly lit city. The little rubbish has been cleaned up. Now it is more suitable for me as a big boss to play, ha 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 ha. He covered his face with one hand, leaned forward and closed with a smile like a pervert, then leaned forward, bent over and rushed down. Enter. In the long night, a winged humanoid creature landed on the balcony of a castle under the cover of night. The slightly staggered figure and the rush of roars sound absorption all show that this guy is weak to a certain extent. Bring blood quickly. The lander yelled, his voice hoarse and dull. You are, the Lord Earl. The roaring voice drew the guards, and when the lander raised his head, the guards couldn't help taking a breath. My friend, how did you become like this? In the depths of the dark passage, a young man strode out. Face, I missed. Blade found a bunch of helpers, and I almost got in there. Give me blood quickly, and I feel my vitality is fading. I have to make some supplements, or I will get old quickly. Vampire, the Earl explained. The silvery white on the temples looked particularly dazzling. Helper. After lowering his head in thought for a while, Faith suddenly smiled. My friend, you have worked hard. Hurry up and take a rest. I will give you the best blood food. Hearing Faith's words, the nervousness of the vampire count relaxed slightly, and then the grievous hatred gushed out like a spring. He was on the brink of death twice in the recent period, which made the once famous vampire count how to bear. The two walked one after the other towards the castle. When the Count Dracula stepped into the hall, a palm ruthlessly penetrated his body from behind, and at the same time, a syringe pierced him accurately on his neck. Face, you. The vampire count was twitching. He was already weak after this sneak attack and completely lost his resistance. My friend, you are so useless. Faith looked extremely cold after shaking the blood on his hand. You, who claim to be a higher species on weekdays, have been made like this by a half-vampire. It really disappoints me, but you can become the sacrifice of Lord Blood God and let the vampire family rise again. Blood God. You want to. Hearing this word, the vampire count was a little frightened. He opened his mouth tremblingly, and finally said a complete sentence. No wonder you keep asking me to catch Blade, so you were thinking of this. No, you can't do this, you will ruin the vampire clan. Now no one in my clan can control the power of Blood God. That is enough to compare the existence of a duke. No one, ha 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 ha, after today, I will rule the vampires. You can go with peace of mind. My friend. Dragging the Count Dracula to the underground altar, Faith's arrogant laughter resounded here. Just when Firth got the vampire count, a small car came to the outside of the castle without knowing it. One after another strangely dressed guys got off the car. It was the little Spider-Man team of 4. The castle and the vampire. This style of painting is really good. Joe Luo fell from the sky and joined the 4 of them. Invisible's mental power swept across the castle, instantly gaining a general understanding of the environment inside. There are a lot of humans in the castle. It should be a group of Hagi tribes. But there is no cave below here, it seems to be an altar. Altar. Hearing this word, Blade was a little excited while nervous. Everyone who can be enshrined by vampires is powerful and terrifying, and this time they seem to have caught a big fish. Hey, wait a minute, guys, who is this? Little Spider-Man interjected. When did New York have so many superheroes? Where did you move in collectively? I am their boss and pay them. Joe Luo glanced at the black little Spider-Man with a smile, and knew that his temper was not stable right now, so he wouldn't tease him anymore. It won't be too late to tease him after the battle is over and his black battle suit is paid. Outside the castle, several people were slapping their mouths. They did not know that the bats hanging on the tree had already reported their information to the owner of the castle. My friend, you really have caused a little trouble. Blades are now under the enemy. What do you think I should do with myself? Throwing the Count Vampire to the ground, Faith's face was obviously angry. To awaken the Blood God, you need 12 purebred earls of vampires, plus special vampire blood that can resist sunlight. These 2 conditions are indispensable, and Faith only meets half of them. This is, yes, it's God, let's let you fail. Hurry, run away, Faith. With your son, Viscount's reality and strength, you can't deal with the knife, Blade. The vampire count spoke intermittently, but secretly he was accumulating the power to commit suicide. The guy Faith was too careful and just gave him another shot. Can't deal with it. There is no such sentence in the Vampire King's dictionary. He grabbed the spine of the Count Dracula, and Faith broke it mercilessly, and a blood-stained bone in his blood-red palm was extremely dazzling. My friend, don't do any useless little moves. My patience is limited. Tying the Count Dracula to the cross, Faith stood in the middle of the altar, his eyes turning blood-red. Around him, 12 pure-blooded vampire counts were tied to the cross at 12 o'clock. After doing some unknown mysterious etiquette on the spot, Faith took out a silver dagger and strode towards the Count Vampire in front of him. These pure-blooded earls were also injected by Faith, but they were even weaker. He couldn't even speak, so he could only stare at the other side fiercely. Faith bowed to the earl in front of him, and Faith took the knife and cut the opponent's wrist. Then walked clockwise, repeating the previous actions. The low blood fell on the ground, as if it had been blessed by some kind of power, and gathered toward the center of the altar without rush. Face, you can't succeed. Blood God is very powerful, it's beyond your control at all. The vampire count who was finally arrested roared, perhaps because of the severe pain. he temporarily got rid of the influence of the garlic essence, showing the appearance of returning to the light. Don't compare me to a guy like you. You don't understand anything at all. With a cut on the wrist of the last vampire, Faith returned to the center of the altar and took a red crystal from his arms. This is the blood of the Duke. Could it be that? The moment he saw the crystal, the vampire count, who had been sure that the other party was doing useless work, finally changed his face. Although the Duke of Vampires is still unable to move freely in the sun, as a rare powerhouse under the prince, they are immune to the sun to a certain extent, which barely meets the second condition. Yes, I got the treasure of the Grand Duke in the legend. How about Blood God's recovery? Blood God is just an obedient dog in front of the prince's phalanx. As Faith was talking, there was a slight vibration on the ground. If he had expected it well, it should have been the group of so-called heroes who had entered the castle. Upon seeing this, Faith broke off his right index finger without hesitation, and then put a phalanx to the wound. As the injury gradually healed, this special phalanx became Faith's possession. Ah! Zhang Mouth let out a loud roar. The power from the finger bones helped Faith break through the line of the Viscount. He held up the Duke's blood high, and severely threw the crystal onto the altar. The next moment, as if a certain switch was turned on, the 12 Earls of Vampires were simultaneously shrouded in some unknown power. Under this force, their souls were directly pulled out, and they accidentally got into Faith's body. Countless blood-red liquids emerged from below, as if a cocoon was tightly shrouded in Faith. A red beam of light soared into the sky, and a small storm was set off with an astonishing momentum. The few people who were attacking Little Spider-Man were immediately attracted by this amazing sight. The next moment their hearts seemed to press on a mountain. A powerful character has appeared. We are not opponents, hurry up. Blade reacted, and suddenly retired in his heart. Where are you going? Come back. Joe Luo grabbed Blade's back collar and pulled the 5 and 3 sturdy man back. You will run away if you are a cat or a dog. We will all die here. Blade couldn't help struggling. We can avoid the edge for a while and find another opportunity. I just want to run now, don't you think it's too late? The red light fell, and a somewhat harsh voice spread throughout the castle. Immediately afterwards, everyone felt the presence of a line of sight at the same time. The fierce gaze dedicated to the predator made Blade tremble in his heart. It's too late. Blade gritted his teeth and yanked out the knife, plucking up all his courage to face the enemy. Blade, well known for a long time. With the red liquid in his hand, there was a red sword in Faith's hand. The slender and sharp blade made a gust of wind while waving. Dang! The two swords intersected, and Blade was knocked back by the enemy. Before he could swing the sword again, Fisk kicked it out. But in this short instant, Blade also threw a daylight grenade to the ground. Bump! The dazzling light suddenly lit up, and everyone couldn't help closing their eyes, only to hear a gust of wind, and then a dark figure flew out. The light dissipated and Deadpool opened his eyes, and saw his boss standing on a high place with the soft blade in one hand and the other hand pinching Faith's neck. Oh, boss, you are too powerful. I just can't stand it anymore. Xiao Zhangjian held her face in her hands, looking shy and fanatical. My Deadpool flattering skills are the best in the world. Wow, is this your boss? Really strong. Little Spider-Man couldn't help looking to the side of John. The two are similar in age, so the generation gap between them is not that big. Definitely, that's my boss. John also recovered from his dumbfoundedness, and immediately showed off to Little Spider-Man proudly. Do you know how much bonus I can get this time? 1 million. How is it? Do you feel like it? How about doing it with us? 1 million. Little Spider-Man was shocked. Is matter so profitable? Look at someone, and think about him again. He is obviously a superhero active in New York, but he still needs to look at his face and work hard to earn that little money. Even a girlfriend who wants a good-looking dress can't afford it. At this point, Little Spider-Man was envious and jealous. On the one hand, he was thinking, why can they make money so easily, but I have to work so hard, and on the other hand, there was a hint of enthusiasm for John's words in his heart. It can fight crime and make a lot of money. It can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Yeah, this guy's vitality is really tenacious. Joe Luo's voice drew the attention of several of them. Faith's body in his hand disintegrated and quickly reorganized as it dissipated. It seemed that he was dying and could not die. It's almost a fight with Wolverine, Joe Luo murmured, and immediately felt the resentful look in Deadpool's eyes, and quickly changed his words, this is about to catch up with my best employee. Xiao Zhangjian immediately became happy, and hopped up with her small arms and legs, and chopped off Faith's arms with 2 swords. Then, in the eyes of everyone, Roar's 2 arms that sucked Faith quickly grew well again. Cut off his head and try. Joe Luo made a look at Deadpool, and Deadpool immediately understood, and went down Faith's head and flew out, and the headless body suddenly stopped struggling. Hee, it looks like he will still die. Deadpool clapped his hands triumphantly and thrust the knife into the ground. It seems that this guy is not as good as you. Joe Luo shook his head disappointedly, and threw the body on the ground. Let's go, finish work and go back and give out bonuses. Hello, I'm finally waiting for my favorite link. Deadpool's eyes beamed, clapping his hands and following Joe Luo. However, when the two turned their heads, the headless corpse on the ground suddenly moved, and a blood sword condensed from blood appeared in his hand, attacking Joe Luo's back like an arrow from the string. Ha! Deadpool quickly turned around, drew the knife on the ground and slashed it over, the sharp blade weaves a net like lightning. Take the knife. Faith's headless corpse remained motionless. 3 seconds later, countless cracks cracked on the corpse, and the corpse broke to the ground. Cool. Joe Luo couldn't help but exclaim. It's cool to have a subordinate who can handle things like this. At this time, several vans rushed here, and the staff members came down with various containers and packed the corpses piece by piece. These are the people Joe Luo arranged in advance. They are all people from Wesley's side. After all, Osborne Industry is a bright industry. It is better to leave these things to Wesley. Faith's head was soaked in sulfuric acid, and the skin and flesh continued to be corroded, and it continued to grow out again, looking very oozing. But even so, Faith was still not dead, a pair of constantly repairing eyeballs staring at everyone, as if he was sending a vicious curse. But staring again is no use. He will be sent to a secret laboratory. Waiting for him will be endless experimental research, be researched. The car that was escorted to the freight left immediately, and the rest of the staff had other tasks. Clean up here, pack all the valuables, and don't leave a single piece of hair. Joe Luo waved his hand vigorously, his eyes lit up on one side, and it was time to search for the loot. The wealth accumulated by vampires over the years is an unimaginable wealth for ordinary people, but for Joe Luo, who now holds a huge amount of wealth in black and white, it is only a number. The main purpose of surrendering vampires this time is not to allow those guys to make trouble on their own territory. The plundering of wealth is second, and it is not as good as the purpose of training soldiers. It's a pity that although Blade and Little Spider-Man have been wooed this time, they haven't been completely seduced yet, but looking at the reactions of these two people, it is hoped that these two people will be fooled over. But these things are for the future. After getting here, Joe Luo is ready to set off for Neon. It was raining outside the window. Joe Luo sat on the seat and cast his eyes to the porthole glass, and there was a dark night sky outside. Rain is floating in the clouds, and occasionally you can see the gleaming beacon lights, like a looming lighthouse on the sea when the storm is approaching. You said, this group of people don't have any eyesight price, so they go to S.H.I.E.L.D. or Tony Stark for trouble. Do you think I'm a bully? As the subject of questioning, Chin glared like a silk to give Joe Luo a look that you know. Joe Luo, who was just about to leave in New York, was approached by Chin before he bought a ticket. He said that he wanted to see how his students are doing here, but in fact Joe Luo didn't know that little bit of careful thinking. The two had a good time, before departure, on the road, on the plane. The professor said that Logan is also in Neon, and hope we take him back. Jin said something hesitation. Seeing the appearance of the Chin, Joe Luo suddenly laughed. Are you afraid I will be jealous? Don't worry, I'm not worried about my charm at all. He pulled Chin over and hugged him, watched the wind and clouds roll outside the window, and gently raised his brows. It always feels like something strange will happen. Joe Luo leaned on his seat, and under the influence of the butterfly effect, the trajectory of this world gradually shifted beyond his control. The feeling of no longer controlling the overall situation is a headache, but it is full of novelty and unknown, which makes him faintly excited. The interesting thing is definitely the more the better. The plane landed at the airport in the dark, carrying a red-haired woman with katana in a sheath, and a tall man in ragged clothes in the special car that came to greet her. The man sits in the back seat, with a shaggy beard and rags, like a savage living in the mountains and forests. The rigid-faced driver in a black suit couldn't help but look at it several times. It wasn't until the red-haired woman cast a stern look that she realized her rudeness and hurriedly withdrew her gaze. The man didn't care about the strange look of the driver. He was leaning on the seat, the car window was shining bright neon lights. It seemed that he hadn't been in contact with the outside world for a long time, and he was a little dazed for a while. Don't let the prosperous appearance fool your eyes, neon is in its darkest period recently. The red-haired woman said in a weird tone, as if she was prophesying, or as a kind reminder. Many people believe that once Lord Yoshida leaves, the shadow will fall. The man looked at the huge billboard that came along, showing the company advertisement of Yoshida Pharmaceutical. It is said that they are developing a brand new drug to delay the aging process of human cells and are currently in the stage of clinical trials. Do you think he is God? The man asked in a faint tone. No, we believe that he is immortal, but he has extraordinary achievements. After the war, Lord Yoshida helped rebuild the country, and his family business became the #1 neon giant. The red-haired woman's eyes were full of enthusiasm, but the man was noncommittal about it. He never believed in any gods in his life, at least in his long life, that thing hasn't appeared yet. The limousine drove into the wide courtyard. This is the official residence of the Yoshida family, and security personnel wearing suits and guns can be seen everywhere. They made no secrets, and had no scruples about holding weapons openly. A lot of bodyguards. Perhaps it was beast's instinct in the body, and the man felt a depressed and dull atmosphere. He couldn't help but think of what the red-haired woman said just now, that neon is in its darkest period. There is a possibility of attack here at any time, deliberate kidnapping, assassination, etc. Those mobs and villains are growing stronger, and the government's control ability is gradually weakening. Quote, the red-haired woman has a solemn expression. This country is on the verge of danger. Those terrifying creatures hidden in the darkness are rising. The torrential rain is like a note, and the dark clouds cover the sky. The lightning pierced the sky like a silver snake, and there was a muffled sound. Logan strode out of the bathroom, his beard and hair spread, frowning and staring, like an angry wolf. 20 minutes ago, he had just finished the worst bath in his life. 3 obasan's in kimonos cleaned Logan's body with a long brush that was scratching his skin for a while. And I was still talking in Japanese that I couldn't understand, which made people dizzy. When encountering Wolverine, who never backs down from the enemy, she almost wanted to show the pair of adamantium alloy claws. It is true that although I have spent some time in the deep mountains and old forests, the sanitary conditions there are not good enough. Before I came to Tokyo, I looked like a homeless man. But the process of taking a shower just now gave Logan the illusion of being beaten up. Logan followed the red-haired woman Yuki, who put on a kimono and walked along the corridor full of antiquity. At intervals under the eaves, there are guards in suits guarding patrols with a vigilant look. In fact, Logan still has an unreal sense of fantasy about himself in this ancient mansion. 10 hours ago, he was still in the mountains of a small, Nuozhou town in Canada, living a solitary life like a savage. Since Stryker's death, this lone wolf wandering around and having no place to live has left Mutant College and embarked on a journey of wandering around the world again. As the professor said, for Logan, a long life is an inescapable curse. This means that he is always alone, unable to get the warmth of family and love. Wolverine, who looks young and strong, is actually twice as old as Charles. He first joined Mutant Academy, not only because of the attraction of his compatriots, but also because he wanted to retrieve the lost memory roar. It's a pity that when Stryker was buried under the dam base of Lake Icaria, this unknowing history passed away, and the sky would never be seen. After the professor reached a cooperation with Joe Luo, he went away from home with his backpack, until the red-haired woman named Shuekshu in front of him found himself. Pushing open the 2 heavy wooden doors with the ancient dragon painted on it, Logan saw Yoshida Ichiro, who he was going to see on this trip. The old man lying in the hospital bed is also the helm of Yoshida Pharmaceutical, a business tycoon who can shake the island nation with a stomping. Logan stepped into this intensive care unit, where various large instruments for measuring vital signs were placed here. A blonde woman wearing a mask gave orders. The other party seemed to be Yoshida's personal doctor. Even a loose white coat could not conceal the graceful curve. Wolverine. Seeing Logan walking by, Yoshida, lying on the multi-point molding inspection bed, called out. The old man whose life is about to come to an end, his face is covered with gray-black age spots and wrinkles, like a candle in the wind. You still look the same as before, but I'm not surprised at all. Yoshida's muddy eyes flashed, and the multi-point molded metal bed supported the old man's sick body like a movable spine. For so many years, I have always wanted to thank you for saving my life. When Yoshida said the last paragraph, he had to rest for a while, breathless. Logan scanned the equipment used to monitor vital signs, even if he didn't know anything about medicine. But from the viscera picture and line data presented on the screen, you can roughly see it. This old man in charge of a giant enterprise is indeed about to die under the torment of illness. I sent someone to invite you over, not just to thank you. Yoshida said seriously. Logan, I want to repay you by giving you something unique, a gift comparable to your life-saving grace. I don't need anything in return. Eternal life is a curse, it entangles you like a ghost, and every loss will make you miserable. In this repeated process, all beliefs in survival are exhausted, and the original goal is lost, becoming a lone wolf, a samurai without a master. After a few breaths, there seemed to be a surge of power in Yoshida's body. He sat up reluctantly, staring at Logan with scorching eyes, and said word by word, I can end your eternal life and let you be an ordinary person. You have been struggling in pain for too long, Logan, I know your past. Yoshida waved his hand, and Shui Shu, who was standing by, handed a thick document. That was the memory Wolverine had been searching for. Through the family and other secret channels, the other party investigated all this in great detail. Logan opened the thick file that Yoshida had prepared for him with a rare feeling of anxiety. As the pages of photos and text were flipped, the memory gate in my mind gradually loosened. Awakening when I was a child, the interdependence with his brother Victor, a day-to-day war, and that short sweet love and heart-wrenching X-weapon experiment. I used huge amounts of resources and energy to go to Canada to find the logging farm. I got the information of Colonel William Stryker from M.I. Jun, looking for your past, the memory you have lost. Logan, immortality is not an easy task, I have a way to eliminate your self-healing ability. Quote. Logan, whose mind was hit hard, was speechless for a while. I'm not ready for death, but you are ready. You can return to the lives of ordinary people, find a woman to fall in love, get married and have children, and form your own warm family. Then he grew old. One day, he died peacefully and naturally. Quote. Yoshida's hoarse voice awakened Logan from his trance. The old man lying on the hospital bed and suffering from cancer had longing gleaming in his cloudy eyes, like a greedy and hungry beast. Wolverine couldn't be more familiar with this kind of gaze, and the other party looked like a hungry wolf staring at his food, wishing to pounce on it immediately. Listen, I am very happy to see you again, but the reason why I came to this place is just to say goodbye to you. Logan just wanted to leave. His arm was held tightly by Yoshida. It was hard to imagine a dying old man who could burst out this kind of power in this thin body. The great foundation that I built all my life can't just fall apart. This country needs me, Wolverine. No matter how Shida roar called, Logan left without looking back this time. He needed to sort out the thoughts in his mind, those vague memories that brought shock, and urgently needed to sort out. It is rather ironic to say that this lone wolf has been searching for a lost life, but after knowing the truth and uncovering the inner fog, he is not happy and full of confusion. Beyond the promenade, the torrential rain is still raging, and the lightning is dancing like a mad snake, swaying blazing silver light. The whole world is shrouded in wind and rain. I thought Dongjin would be very hot. Zhou Luo, who walked down the stairs, murmured, and the Qin next to him covered his mouth and smirked. He clearly understood Zhou Luo's joke. If you want Dongjin hot, it's not impossible. Qin leaned against Zhou Luo's arms and drew circles softly on him. Don't make trouble, it's not suitable to be hot here, we will be hot again when we return to our residence. The two of them hugged and got into the car. The driver turned a blind eye to it, but he smacked his tongue inwardly. He was an insider of Shuheihui, and recognized this woman as the famous Mutant Grey. The actual boss of my own family is really amazing. The combination of hands will make countless ninja fanatical believers of Black Sky obey this man, and such a beautiful mutant beauty is so attached to him. It's so enviable. This city is in the shadows. Chin listened to the man's powerful heartbeat, his voice faint, with a bit of charm. Wesley mentioned it once and said that there was some unusual movement on the neon side. I didn't care at the time, thinking that it was just the way the Yoshida family used to promote new products. Quote. Joe Luo smiled warmly, giving people a wonderful power of warmth and firmness, but his hands wandered very dishonestly, making Chin's body instantly tighten. Don't be here. Don't worry, this car is specially made. Joe Luo chuckled and pressed a button on the car. With a sound of basically no sound, the front and the back of the car were divided into two spaces. You came to me suddenly, you must not just miss me. Joe Luo's mobile game walked to a key point and pressed it lightly. The pointer released a trace of electric charge, and the tingling sensation made the Chin's body tremble. At this moment, a song, Little River Flows, quietly sounded. Professor, the hot breath made Chin's words intermittently, he saw an unusual movement. The Yoshida family has had a good cooperative relationship with the Hand Kaikai for hundreds of years. The ninjas of the Hand Kaikai have helped this family through several difficulties. Until modern times, Neon was defeated, and the two forces re-emerged with the help of powerful funds. Murakami used to be one of the 5 leaders of the Shuheihui. He used the secret medicine developed by the Dragon Bone to win over the high-level and business-rich of Neon, and Shiro Tien Shiro was one of them. But as the keel was exhausted, Tien Zhilang, who was suffering from cancer, gave up the good relationship with Shuheihui and turned to another hidden force. Quote. The two were exchanging information while exchanging liquids, and Chin slowly recounted a history that even Joe Luo didn't know. Hydra. Joe Luo raised his eyebrows. Chin nodded. If Shuheihui controls the neon underground world, then the power of the Yoshida family is even more terrifying. Apart from biopharmaceuticals as the leading industry, there are also energy, military, manufacturing, and so on. The Yoshida family is like a towering tree with intertwined roots, penetrating the root system into this country and infiltrating everywhere. Do you still care about Hydra? Joe Luo looked at Chin suspiciously. You won't still have contact with S.H.I.E.L.D. Chin chuckled slightly. You can't rely on yourself for mutants' affairs. We also have to find a way to help. Joe Luo was speechless for a while. So you pulled S.H.I.E.L.D. onto the boat, come on, then I was taken advantage of this time. So I'm here to comfort the soul in your hands. Chin wrapped his arms around Joe Luo's neck, moving up and down. It really doesn't take you. Joe Luo couldn't help taking a breath. Since Dark Phoenix Awakening, the piano has become more and more crazy. What exactly did their research come up with? Joe Luo continued the previous topic. In the original timeline, the dying Yoshida Ichiro was nothing more than trying to deprive Wolverine Logan of the self-healing factor, and then transfer it to himself, so as to achieve the goal of a wave of life. But now it seems that perhaps it is the influence of the butterfly effect, all of which are even more involved. According to HYDRA's technology ability, they cooperated with the Yoshida family, thinking it would not be as simple as researching new products that benefit mankind. Biological viruses have extremely strong spread and reproductive properties, and it is said that they can delay his lifespan. Yoshida Ichiro was diagnosed with a malignant tumor about half a year ago. The cancer cells spread rapidly, and with the current medical technology, there is no cure at all. At that time, Shuheihui had already used the last remaining Dragon Bone secret medicine on Erika. So Yoshida Ichiro, who was afraid of death, kicked his former partner relentlessly and turned his head to HYDRA's embrace. Quote. Joe Luo took her words and understood the ins and outs of the matter. Hydra was stationed in one of the Neon factions and found Ishiro Yoshida, who used the temptation to delay his life and gained the trust and investment of the Neon businessman. In the past 6 months, Yoshida has invested billions of dollars in biomedicine. Even a laboratory was secretly established to store and purchase a large amount of adamantium. For this reason, many small and medium-sized enterprises under the name of the Yoshida family are on the verge of bankruptcy. Once Yoshida Ichiro died and huge debts and unreturned cost inputs were exposed, the Yoshida family immediately fell into the dust from the clouds. Chin sorted out the information he had obtained. The reason why she said that this country is in the shadows is because once the Yashida family falls, and the whole body is pulled, it may involve the entire economic collapse of Neon. Then what about HYDRA's research? The Yashida family cleaned the black ninjas of the Hand-to-Hand Association and replaced them with brand new security personnel. The ancestor virus is their core secret. I just probably know that Hydra has found a plant named Sun Ladder in tribal ruins in West Africa. It contains a viral substance in the form of RNA, and the medicine extracted from it has the effect of enhancing the human body's ability and prolonging life. When Joe Luo heard this, he almost couldn't hold back the spray. What is this, Resident Evil? Researching viruses, launching the world, creating panic, destroying the world. I also made it seem like a try. That group of people is fine, not go to S.H.I.E.L.D., and run to the island country to play Resident Evil. What kind of thing is this? So, why did they take Erica? Do they want to use her for experiments? Joe Luo was shocked. For a girl who is so soft and weak like Erica, how could these fools like Hydra be willing to experiment with her? This is too inhuman. It's utterly conscience. No, this matter should be led by Yashida Ichiro. Chin reminded. Joe Luo thought for a while, and suddenly understood the meaning of Chin. HYDRA's research on the ancestor virus deviated from its original purpose, and instead developed a variety of biological weapons. But what Yashida Ichiro wanted was not to become an irrational zombie. He is eager to continue his life and regain his youth, but it is a pity that his massive investment has not seen a return. So he made two-handed preparations, found Wolverine Logan, who had the self-healing factor, and attempted to strip the other party's self-healing factor to achieve the goal of life extension. And he, who has worked closely with Shuheihui, naturally knows a lot of information about Heikong, so he also wants to deprive Heikong of his power and prepare for the third hand. This old clapper is ambitious enough, Joe Luo said uncomfortably. When the time comes to hold this old clapper in my hand, I must teach him a lesson. Let him know why the flowers are so red. Logan probably doesn't know what happened yet. Based on his reckless character, after learning the truth, he might rush into the Yashida mansion and screw off the opponent's head. Chin fell softly on the leather sofa, with a mischievous smile. The blush on his face did not fade for a long time. When shall we act? Don't worry, the huge wealth of the Yajishan family can't be bargained to others in vain. If you get rid of the Yashishan family at this time, it will be a waste of water. No, if you hit someone else, you still want to grab something from someone else. Chin's eyes widened. Joe, you're such a bad person. Did you know that I was bad the first day? Joe Luo smiled, not knowing where he took out a camera, and snapped at the piano. It seems that I need to let you deepen your impression of me. Joe, you fool, you've been tossing on this journey for an hour. Oh, it's been an hour. I don't even feel it. Joe Luo's camera shutter has never been heard before. It seems that happy time is always short. Yes, it's this posture. Don't move, come again, open. Tisk tisk tisk. Watching the precious material that was taken while the Chin was weak and unwilling to move, Joe Luo was extremely excited. If you can take these photos, this trip is worth it. Enter. Sensoji Temple is the oldest temple in Higashitsu, and it is also a popular tourist attraction. Every year, nearly 30 million people come here to take pictures, especially around New Year's Day, when there are many pilgrims who come to worship. Today, a long cordon has been set up here, and the Metropolitan Police Department has deployed a large number of manpower to maintain order and safety. Outside is a rush of reporters and citizens, converging into a turbulent ocean. The streets and roads around Sensoji Temple were all emptied and blocked, and black cars parked in front of this historic temple like a long winding dragon. Many big shots in black suits and solemn faces got out of the car. They were all mourners who came to mourn. Luxurious cars rained on the wide streets. Apart from the relatives and friends of the Yashida family, as well as elite celebrities from all walks of life, even the people of Dongjin's words came here in person and presented wreaths and elegiac couplets. It is said that Mr. Prime Minister took time out of his busy schedule to call Yashida Shingen to give his condolences to him, preparing to award medals to commend Yashida Ichiro's outstanding achievements. After a person's death can have such a sensational pomp, it is enough to prove how prominent the power and status of the Yashida family in this country. Although 80% of the Neon people believe in Shintoism, they generally use Buddhist funerals after their deaths. The body of Yoshida Ichiro is placed in the nave of Sensoji Temple, and there are waves of chanting in the main hall. Logan got out of a black car. He had already booked a ticket, but the sudden death of Yoshida Ichiro disrupted the plan. Because of emotion and reason, I have to wait until the funeral is over before I can leave. Business and political tycoons and celebrities arrived one after another, entering Sensoji Temple, which had long been blocked and emptied. Following Yuki in a black kimono, Logan also walked into Sensoji Temple. The bodyguards on both sides of the road were holding submachine guns openly, with an alert and solemn look. Arriving between the pavilions in the depths of the courtyard, Logan's eyes were attracted by the mighty armor standing next to the statue of Yoshida Ichiro. The armor belongs to the Silver Warrior, and he will stand there forever guarding the soul of the elder. Shuekshu explained softly. The Silver Samurai is the most powerful warrior in the Yoshida family, like a legendary existence, no one has ever seen it with his own eyes. At this time, under the guidance of the monk, the granddaughter of Yoshida Ichiro, Mariko, gradually came to bow before the portrait. He cleaned up his mood, he was about to leave after a few days anyway. Wait, Logan inadvertently caught a glimpse of the hideous tattoo on the monk's arm. His keen intuition drove him to come out more and more, ignoring the scolding of the bodyguards behind him, and grabbing the monk who showed the flaw. Who knew that the other party directly drew the gun from the generous monk's robe, and shot a bullet directly through his lower abdomen. The crowd screamed in panic, and the gunshots were loud and continuous, and they were caught off guard. The bodyguards around were shot down one after another, the monks in a group opened their robes, and the vicious and hideous black tattoos were undoubtedly revealed. If it had changed from the usual, Logan would have been exposed to the dense rain of bullets, showing a pair of adamantium alloy claws and rushing to kill him. However, an inexplicable sense of weakness lingered all over the body, and Mariko was kidnapped and taken away by a gang of bandits in a dazed line of sight. Logan took a few breaths, finally regaining a bit of strength, and stretched out his claws to kill the enemy in front of him. He looked around, and the interior of Sensoji Temple was in chaos, like a boiling pan, the sound of gunshots and screams mixed and echoed. Wolverine had never encountered such a situation before, his self-healing ability disappeared, and his whole body felt like a bad cold, soft and even standing unsteady. What the hell is wrong with me? Logan cursed in a low voice, struggling to rush to stop the man who took Mariko, but he was caught by a powerful arm. Come here, sit down and have a sip of tea. Joe Luo pulled Wolverine over and sat on the steps with a smile on his face, and then waved back to Erica with a grim face. Leave it to you, don't make it too bloody, it won't be good to scare the children. Erica curled her lips and rushed to catch up with the gunman who had killed him outside Sensoji Temple. She was quietly rescued by Joe Luo overnight, but her heart was suffocated these days, and she vented all on these gangsters. Why are you guys here? Logan squinted at this young man. He took the time to return to school and naturally heard a series of legendary stories about Joe Luo. Such as punching Stryker, kicking Magneto, Brotherhood disappearing in the middle of talking and laughing. A serious person like Wolverine almost didn't laugh at the time. Oh, you thought I would come? Joe Luo patted Wolverine's shoulder with a face slung. If it wasn't for the big bald head, I guess I wouldn't bother to care about you. Holding a 300-pound Logan in one hand, Joe Luo walked out of the Sensoji Temple as if strolling in a leisurely garden. You fool, let me go. Wolverine's face flushed red, and he was about to cry. Wolverine Logan, a handsome 7-foot man, has never been carried in his hands during this long life. This is a naked humiliation to him. He is almost crying. See the tears in the corners of his eyes. Joe Luo ignored Wolverine's struggle and brought him to Sensoji Temple along the way. He parked his motorcade outside, opened the door, and Joe Luo stuffed Wolverine in. Don't toss Logan, you are so weak that you can still do it. How could this be? Logan was leaning on the black leather seat, his hands dripping with blood. After the adamantium claws were retracted, the wound on his hands did not recover as quickly as usual. In the past, it was just a pain, but now he is constantly tortured by this pain, coupled with the wound from a bullet on his body. This tough guy's forehead is bulging with bruises and cold sweat. It's all right, you can rest quickly, I'll find someone to bandage you up. Joe Luo sighed and waved to the outside, and immediately two beautiful doctors with white skin and white uniforms came to treat Wolverine with a smile. This is something I prepared specially for you. Enjoy it, mighty Wolverine. Chen Zan grinned and walked towards Sensoji Temple again. Yoshida Ichiro suspended himself to deceive everyone, and then deprived Logan of his self-healing factor to regain his youth and life. And his son Yoshida Shingen is colluding with the gang, wanting to seize power in one fell swoop. The two sides are in intrigue, and Hydra is eyeing. The undercurrent of Dongjin is like a cloud covering huge amounts of clouds. The conflicts that broke out in many places made the city a mess and gradually became chaotic. Then I will be on the stage too. Zhou Luo smiled and participated in this interesting playground. A faint loud roar came from a distance, and Shingen Yoshida, who was sitting in the corporate building, felt a tremor, but he didn't care about it. Why did you choose me? Although in the eyes of outsiders, Shishida Shingen will inherit the family business sooner or later and become one of the best big shots in this country. However, only Gigi Tian Xinshuan himself knew that the aging father did not want to delegate power at all. He was just a puppet who was supported to come to power. Just like the secret laboratory established in Yokohama, the investment cost alone is as high as several billion US, causing many small and medium-sized enterprises under the name of the Yoshida family to go bankrupt. However, Shishi Tian Xinshuan has no right to refuse. He can only be a filial son, helping his father hide the financial statements and deceive the shareholders of the board of directors. He thought that he would gain his father's trust and put the family business in his own hands. Who knew that Yoshida Ichiro chose Mariko in the end? You are the most suitable candidate, Mr. Yoshida. Erika remembered what Zhou Luo had said to him. To draw Shinzan over, it would be best to foster a puppet and control the industry of the Yashishin family. Zhou Luo doesn't need Xinshuan to offer everything about the Yijishin family, he just needs to be obedient and stand up when he needs it. Your father doesn't trust you at all. He gives your daughter the rights of the family, but he throws all the huge pressure of business losses on you. Are you willing? Erika continued to recall what Zhou Luo had taught him, and repeated it as it was. There was no way, she was good at fighting and killing her, and convincing others that she really couldn't do it. Isn't this the reason you cooperated with the gang? Assassinate Mariko, and then take over the power logically. Is this a threat? Yaji Tian Xinshuan tried to straighten his back, trying to save a bit of the majesty of the eldest son of the big family. No, this is a bargaining chip. Erika's voice was cold. Marriage is in our hands, and Shirata Shiro is dead. If you control this current family heir, you can take the initiative. My father, Yaji Tian Xinshuan hesitation, he seemed to perceive a clue. Dead man won't be resurrected, don't worry, Erika smiled sweetly, I like to help others the most. I will definitely help you to the end. Hand-in-Hand Association had a good friendship with the Yoshida family hundreds of years ago. I hope this situation can be repeated. Yoshida Shingen lowered his head and nodded silently after a while. Yokohama, Secret Laboratory. Mrs. Viper sat at a luxurious desk and gave orders to her men. Preparing to perform a remodeling operation on Yoshida Ichiro. Even without Wolverine Logan, the ancestor virus can play the same role. Although the price is to become an inhuman monster, Yoshida Ichiro, who wants to survive, shouldn't care about it. The moment she walked out of the office, the entire underground steel building reverberated with harsh buzzing. The alarm goes off. The triggered siren awakened everyone in the laboratory, and hundreds of armed personnel took up their weapons one after another. They are all elite fighters belonging to Hydra, and some of them belong to secret samurai carefully cultivated by the Yoshida family. A few minutes ago, Zhou Luo, who was standing in the center of the watchtower, smiled slightly. The elevator opens automatically, as do the security doors inside the laboratory. Everything seems undefended to intruders. When they saw Zhou Luo alone, these armed men let go of their nervousness a bit and immediately notified Mrs. Viper. Bring here. Before the voice of one of the Hydra executives was over, a bloody massacre came in an instant. Zhou Luo walked into the hall in a leisurely manner, and all the enemies that appeared in his realization were killed in an instant. The steel buildings on the upper and lower floors echoed with the buzzing of alarms, mixed with messy footsteps, like a flock of frightened birds. Those hidden emergency exits are now all locked. A large number of staff and high-level supervisors gathered at the exit and tried every means to restart the safety door that cut off the power supply. But all this is in vain, and today's laboratory is like an isolated island in the ground. Everyone can only be trapped on the island, begging God to show mercy. Except for Mrs. Viper. After she heard the alarm sound, she immediately switched to the monitoring center's screen and found that there was a huge amount of power gap between the two sides. She promptly sorted out the core information about the ancestor virus, as well as several important experimental specimens and some virus reagents, and hurriedly rode the elevator all the way down. As a high-level figure of Hydra, Mrs. Viper is naturally well versed in the truth of the 3 caves of the rabbit. She parked a submarine below, and in the event of an accident, she could leave quietly at any time. What the hell is going on? Madame Viper's heart was full of humiliation. She was not without failure, but she had never had such an embarrassing experience. Even if the enemy doesn't know who it is, he has to flee in a hurry like a bereaved dog. Boom! The huge amounts of explosion sounded in the underground space, and a huge amounts of hole was cracked from the ceiling. Joe Luo's tall and straight figure fell steadily and stood in front of Mrs. Viper. "Dr. Green, won't you entertain the visiting guests?" Joe Luo smiled and looked at Mrs. Viper, whose face changed drastically. "Yoshida Shilang is still waiting for you to help him restore his youth, but he doesn't know what he is facing as a youth. People who are not old." Mrs. Viper once signed a contract with the ancient evil god Chthon, giving her the ability that greatly slows down aging and maintains youth forever. This has kept her youthful and beautiful for more than half a century, but she has a vicious heart. It can be said that she is a femme fatale. "What do you want to do to me?" Mrs. Viper, who knew she couldn't escape, chose another way to save herself. "I can do it." She cast a charming wink at Joe Luo. "I can make you happy here too. Come on, you are my favorite type." "Sorry, you are not the one I like." Joe Luo glanced at her contemptuously. An old woman who didn't know how old was still trying to seduce her. "Go to sleep." Joe Luo's unabashed contempt caused a burst of resentment in Mrs. Viper's heart, but she could only cover it up forcibly and suppress the anger in her heart. "I can use the ancestor virus. Sorry, I copied all the experimental data about the virus a few days ago." "How could it be?" Madame Viper's eyes widened, with an unbelievable look. "Your technology has fallen behind, Auntie." Joe Luo lazily flicked his nails. "Tony Stark's JARVIS can even do it with Dr. Zola. Is it your secret technology?" "Don't be kidding me." The frustrated Madame Viper threw away the metal box in her hand and smashed it at Joe Luo, who was standing in front of her. No matter how strong the opponent is, she cannot suppress her strong desire to survive. The powerful explosive force made her rush to the edge of the corridor in an instant, and jumped down with one hand on the railing. The top of the submarine lifted, and Mrs. Viper jumped directly in. The turbine started, huge amounts of power and propellers, the sluice below burst open, and the submarine sank into the bottomless deep seabed. Everything happened in a blink of an eye, making Mrs. Viper unexpectedly go smoothly. She slumped in the airtight cabin, and a kind of rejoicing for the rest of her life came to her heart. Joe Luo, carrying the metal box, shook his head and said softly, "Walk all the way, Dr. Green." 1 hour later, Joe Luo was sitting on AC-17, Global Overlord, strategic military transport aircraft, and the rear compartment was loaded with a large amount of stored Eichmann metal, which was a rare harvest from this trip to Dongjin. Yoshida Ichiro originally wanted to use adamantium to make a giant samurai armor. Use HYDRA's life-saving equipment to survive, and then absorb the ermine metal in Wolverine Logan's body to obtain the active self-healing factor. It's a pity that the day failed, and Logan, who was under the control of the Yoshida family, disappeared. Yoshida Ichiro's plan failed, and only HYDRA's alternative plan could be implemented. In the end, this extravagant Emin metal armor became the trophy in Joe Luo's hands. And that lonely island has sunk under the bombardment of several micro-submarine nuclear missiles, and only a few sharp reefs have emerged. The submarine that Mrs. Viper was riding in, even if it exploded underwater, also released huge amounts of power. The destructive force stirred up raging waves and directly engulfed the secret laboratory located below the island. The entire island was hit by shockwave, and the bottom rock layer fell apart and fell apart. The rubble was lifted into the air like a heavy rain, and then the island sank to the bottom of the sea within 40 minutes. It's a perfect ending. Joe Luo leaned on the seat, put his arms around the beautiful woman, sipped the wine, and sighed softly. The troubled Hydra was solved in one fell swoop, and this farce in Dongjin ended. Whether it is the Yashida family or other forces, they will only silently be a bystander for a short time. In the sea below, Neon sent ships and assault boats to search for survivors. A submarine blew up near Yokohama inexplicably. This will definitely make the Neon people sleepless, so it must be investigated. It is a pity that HYDRA's viral substances and test samples all evaporated in the explosion. The blazing high temperature is enough to evaporate and kill any tenacious virus cells. In the end, the Neon Self-Defense Forces could only salvage the wreckage of the submarine that came up, and perhaps some gravel and rubble from the interior of the laboratory, and nothing else. In fact, Zhou Luo originally expected that Mrs. Viper would be driven into desperation and jumped over the wall in a hurry to spread the ancestor virus directly. The huge Dongjin has all become a hunting ground for zombies. This kind of scene feels fascinating just thinking about it. But in doing so, the uncontrollable risk is too high. The technological barriers in this world are not strong. In case the virus spreads and is not contained in time, I am afraid it will create a Marvel world biohazard. Opportunity. I saved the world. Zhou Luo sighed triumphantly, shamelessly. Sitting across from him, Wolverine, who was recovering from ability, glanced at him as the effect of the medicine gradually passed away, and was convinced for the first time that he was shameless. What do you look at? Zhou Luo waved his hand indifferently. When I send you back to Xavier School, I won't care about you anymore. I don't want to go back. Wolverine glanced left and right, especially leaning on his left shoulder. Let me down anywhere. Why, finally found your memory. Now you are going to find an old lover. No, there are no old lovers. Wolverine smiled bitterly and shook her head. I have been searching for such a long memory, but now I find that it is better not to find it back. Oh, Zhou Luo was a little curious. Why do you feel so sad? Do you have any plans for the future? Time has left too many traces on me. My former friends, lovers, all vanished. Logan looked awkward. I think I will find a place to build a small house of my own, and then find a quieter job, such as being a lumberjack and buying a truck. Is that different from your previous life? Zhou Luo looked speechless. And you are too boring. How about I offer you a choice? What? Logan asked casually. Come to my company and help me train my staff. Zhou Luo opened the high-level cigar box and pushed it in front of Logan. Training. Logan frowned, grabbed a cigar and lit it. What do you mean, murder? No, it's security. I'm a serious businessman. How could I do murderous activities? Zhou Luo laughed hypocritically. The standard working hours are 3 days a week, 3 hours a day. As for the salary, the annual salary is 1 million. This is just the cost of training. If you are willing to work overtime, you will have more money. There is no need to fight and kill, and there is no need for a boring life from 9 to 5 every day. In addition, I can equip you with an apartment. How about? Quote. Listening to a condition given by Zhou Luo, Logan just raised his eyebrows, lit his cigar, took a hard breath, and exhaled a light blue smoke. Diaresis, Cuba's top cigars. I haven't smoked such a good cigar for a long time. He praised, and then said, at another condition, if there is enough of this thing, I will agree. He shook the cigar in his hand and spoke slowly. Ding. After the host's guidance, Wolverine was successfully captured and started a lifelong hobby, cigar taster. Yo, there is such an unexpected joy. Chen Zan was happy and nodded without hesitation. No problem. Super God Photographer System. Host. Zhou Luo. Main profession. Photographer, recording beautiful moments, and extracting ability from photos. Main skills. 1. Photography. Record beautiful moments and freeze frames. The qualified photos taken can increase the experience value of extraction skills. 2. Extract LV3 10/200ths. A skill or attribute of the corresponding character can be extracted from the photos taken, and the current extraction ability completeness is 30%. Deputy occupation. Life mentor. Guide those who only know how to fight and kill lost lambs, develop their lifelong hobbies. Student. 1. Natasha Normanoff Black Noter Widow Foodie LV3 12/15. 2. Steve Rogers Captain America Dunzi LV2 18/10 can be upgraded. 3. Tony Stark Iron Man Pimp LV2 15/10 can be upgraded. 4. Clarice Fang Flashing Sunny Fun Model LV3 7/15. 5. Bruce Wayne Batman Diablo LV3 14/15. 6. Chin Gray Phoenix Barbecue Shishi LV2 6/10. 7. Harley Quinn Female Joker Torture Master LV3 7/15. 8. Jane Foster Female Thor Sichuan Cuisine Chef LV2 4/10. 9. Erica Black Sky Civilization Benchmark LV1 4/5. 10. Thor Talk to LV1 7/5 can be upgraded. 11. Wade Deadpool Money Fan LV1 25 can be upgraded. 12. Logan Wolverine Cigar Taster LV1 0/5. He, you can get another wave of levels, so cool. Joe Luo ordered upgrade casually. Ding. Steve Rogers upgrade to Tunzi LV3. Body control ability restores 15%. Physical fitness upper limit plus 15%. Melee ability plus 15%. The next upgrade experience is 8/15. Ding. Congratulations to the host for having the 5th student who was upgraded to LV3. All attributes are plus 15%. Ding. Tony Stark upgrade to Pimp LV3. Charm plus 15%. Upper limit of physical fitness plus 15%. Mental power plus 15%. Next upgrade experience is 5/15. Ding. Congratulations to the host for having the 6th student who was upgraded to LV3, with all attributes plus 10%. Ding. Thor upgrade to Talk LV2. Physical fitness plus 10%. Mental power plus 10%. Bloodline supernatural power plus 10%. The next upgrade experience is 2/10. Ding. The host has the 9th student upgraded to LV2, with all attributes plus 3%. Ding. Wade upgrade is Kai Mi LV2. The upper limit of physical fitness plus 10%, mental power plus 10%, the intensity of 5 senses plus 10%, the next upgrade experience is 15/10. Ding. Congratulations to the host for having the 10th student who was upgraded to LV2, all attributes plus 2%. Ding. Wade upgrade is Kai Mi LV3. The upper limit of physical fitness is plus 15%, mental strength is plus 15%, the intensity of 5 senses is plus 15%, and the next upgrade experience is 1/15. Ding. Congratulations to the host for having the 7th student upgraded to LV3, all attributes plus 5%. Feeling the power rushing through his body, Joe Luo's eyes lit up, and his bones made a cracking sound, and his overall strength improved once again. Joe, what's the matter with you? The movement on Joe Luo's body was so loud that everyone on the plane immediately noticed it. It's okay, it's just a small breakthrough, don't worry. Feeling the worried and scorching eyes of Chin and Erica, Joe Luo hugged them and comforted them. Logan, who was silent on the side, lit another cigar silently, and hung on the wall with a curse in his heart. Joe Luo definitely didn't pay attention to Logan's eyes, but secretly thought about the gains and losses of this upgrade. The more the upgrade, the less the percentage of improvement. In this way, the later upgrade effect will become smaller and smaller. But as my strength continues to improve, every 1% increase now may be more than a few tens of percent increase at the beginning. It's right to think about it this way. If I keep the percentage increase as I did at the beginning, I might be able to slap Thanos a few more times. Quote. As he thought about it, Joe Luo slowly fell backwards, his spirit was relieved, and he waited for the plane to return to New York. Boss, it's time to talk about cooperation with the military. Listening to the voice on the phone, Joe Luo sighed helplessly. Let's do it, can't you guys leave me? Joe Luo, who arrived in New York, had to continue running before he could catch his breath. No way. After the last meeting with General Ross, the excited general immediately started running around, and soon won this meeting for Joe Luo, allowing Osborne Industries to showcase his project. After dealing with the matter at hand, Joe Luo drove towards Washington, D.C. by car. In addition to Erica, who was temporarily acting as secretary, he also brought the rebellious Ivan Vanke. The fierce arrogance of this big bear is now slightly reduced, and he is no longer full of pride as before. Geniuses with outstanding talents are often the same kind of creatures, and they have indisputable pride and self-confidence in their areas of expertise. This is the superiority of ordinary people from the perspective of wisdom and knowledge, whether it is the gentle Mr. Fantastic Reed or the narcissistic Stark. And Ivan, who regards Tony Stark as a family enemy, is naturally no exception. The common problem of the genius group is that they despise or ignore the ignorant, stupid people like Hanmer will definitely not be regarded by Ivan. However, Joe Luo is different. He is neither an idiot nor a control freak, and he is extremely powerful. This makes the big bear to stay here with peace of mind and give up his original careful thinking. As the vehicle moved slowly, Joe Luo inadvertently saw from the window sporadic groups gathering outside the door. They put up signs or shouted slogans, but no one paid any attention to them, and dedicated security personnel would shut them out. After the anti-mutant vanguard Senator Kelly disappeared, the heated discussion about mutants fishing vessels has gradually faded over time. Not long ago, Mr. Vice President revisited the past and made a public speech on the Mutant Registration Act, but this time his position and wind direction are completely different. With a brief and powerful speech, he made a sound of justice for mutants' unfair treatment. His inflammatory and infectious speech touched many citizens. But at that time Joe Luo was still in Neon, so he didn't have the chance to appreciate the charming demeanor of this vice president. According to the plan prepared in advance, the Osborne Industry Alliance issued a statement. Expressed sympathy for mutants' difficult situation and the necessity of advocating the Mutant Registration Act. It is announced that it will openly recruit mutant employees, who can enjoy the same salary and various rights as ordinary people. After a series of tricks, Mutant once again detonated the fishing reel craze, but compared to the previous verbal criticism, this time the tone was reversed. A vote of experts stood up to speak, popularized the concept of mutant in detail, and told the general public that this is not an incurable disease or a curse from God. This has changed many people's views on mutant, and gradually changed mutants' image. However, many anti-mutant groups have organized demonstrations at the door recently to try to prevent mutant employees from joining. These sporadic attacks have little effect on the Osborne industry. Without the support of big shots with ulterior motives, non-governmental organizations that lack cohesion and background support will not be able to set off any storms. This is your chance to revive the family's glory, Ivan. Sitting in the car, Joe Luo looked at a big guy in a formal suit. Even in a suit and leather shoes, this big 5'3" thick guy still looked more like his own bodyguard. Prove to the general of the hexagonal building that Ivan Vanke is no worse than Tony Stark. He was like a fisherman throwing bait, with a smile that looked upright but sinister. Tony can make arc reactor, you can also copy it, he can be transformed into Iron Man, so you have to make those fancy steel armors, and it's cheaper than his. So I want to be like a monkey, let those big shots pick and choose. Ivan looked ugly. He didn't like these twists and turns, and appreciated the simple and rude style of doing things. If you want to defeat your opponent in a fair contest, you must first obtain an equal position with him. Joe Luo looked at this sharp-edged man, and imagined what it would look like when his edges and corners were smoothed out. The car drove into the Arlington area on the Potomac River, where the country's highest military command authority was in sight. Joe Luo did not immediately contact the personnel of the Ministry of National Defense. Instead, he first met with General Ross in the Heroes Hall on the third-floor corridor. This floor is the office of the Secretary of Defense and the Department of the Army, and ordinary people can't even get through the door. General Rose was late, and the old man said apologetically, "Something happened. I shouldn't have kept you waiting." Joe Luo laughed and shook hands with General Ross. This old man was not as strict as the rumors outside, provided that he had absolute strength. Edward Air Force Base, a transport plane landed on the 22nd apron. Joe Luo and officials from the Ministry of National Defense stepped off the elevator. In addition to General Ross, Tony's good friend Colonel Rode, as well as officers from the Military Council. The Energy Weapons Seminar was held at 8 o'clock in the morning. Joe Luo submitted a cooperation agreement with Osborne Industries, which fully elaborated on the concept and design of energy weapons. Then in the afternoon they went to the nearby Air Force Base to conduct field tests. This time it was not just them who participated in the exhibition, but also Justin Hammer. While Stark Industries withdrew from the military industry, Hammer Industries packed up the weapons manufacturing plants sold by Stark Industries. Unfortunately, I was immediately slapped in the face by the steel battle suit. The terrible individual combat ability eclipsed all the individual weapons in the world. So Hanmer was in a tragedy, but this guy had a solid background, and he forced another opportunity to show himself, wanting to earn face through this opportunity. Well, although 10% will still be tragedy. Hammer Industries has always had a good relationship with the procurement officials of the Department of Defense. General Ross said in a low voice. Joe Luo curled his lips. With such an unchallenging opponent, even if Ivan made a shot, he felt that he was losing the price. The Ministry of Defense also needs something to decorate the facade. Stark is unwilling to hand over his steel armor, so he can only rely on Justin Hammer, an unlearned guy. He is imitating steel armor. It is said that the cost is 120 million sets. I have seen the first generation finished product. It can only be described in 4 words: like a pile of shit. Quote. Joe Luo and the general exchanged a wave of eyes tacitly, and both saw a disdainful smile in each other's eyes. While talking and laughing along the way, Hanmer stepped into the gate of the base in a look that he thought was very awesome, and walked out of the way that his 6 relatives did not recognize him. 2 soldiers were behind him pushing a pile of boxes, probably new weapons used by Hanmer Industries to display. Yeah, where did this little guy come from? General, is he your nephew? Hammer tried to imitate Tony Stark's unruly body, but his acting skills were really bad. Especially Joe Luo, who is a good friend of Tony, really wants to throw the soles of his size-big shoes onto his face. This is Ivan Vanke, the chief weapon expert of Osborne Industries. General Ross introduced casually. As for this man, he is a genius with a very broad vision and wisdom. I like what you said. Joe Luo laughed. Genius. Hanmer turned blue, as if he had eaten shit. A serious person like General Rose is not easy to boast, and he hasn't even treated him well. Mr. Hanmer, it's time for you to perform. Joe Luo really didn't want to care about this fool, so he pushed him behind and asked him to go over and send it. In the presence of the big shots of the Ministry of National Defense and the Military Commission, Hammer opened the boxes one by one and began to be ashamed. Clerici semi-automatic pistol, 9mm bullets, M24 shotgun, manually loaded, 5 bullets per magazine. Everyone. Indifferent face. 40cm caliber grenade gun, capable of firing tear gas, smoke grenades, M machine gun, 6 independent barrels, metal storm is enough to beat all enemies into tomato sauce. Everyone. Still indifferent face. Seeing everyone's indifferent expressions, Hanmo couldn't help feeling a little embarrassed. Although none of the things he took out were anything new, they had to react somewhat. It seems I have to come up with something really good. He opened a black box confidently. This is a Sidewinder missile, with cyclone explosives, with a 3-ring methyl trinitromin explosive, which can directly blow up a 3-story underground bunker. This is my Eiffel Tower, my Rachmaninoff Third Symphony, my most classic. Quote. The shape is elegant, the lethality is huge, and it is as holy and beautiful as my Statue of Liberty. I named it Thayek's wife. Colonel Rod rolled his eyes without a trace, and Hanmo was shamelessly boasting. They had long been used to seeing each other. These things are not important, they care more about the steel armor imitated by Hanmer Industries. At the military weapons seminar a week later, the military must at least show what it showed up to explain where the huge expenses this year have been spent on. This kind of broken copper and iron can also be called a weapon. Ivan was a little surprised. He couldn't understand why this kind of garbage, which should be placed in a second-hand factory, could also be obtained here. Ha 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 ha, Joe Luo laughed unabashedly, feeling the angry gaze cast by Hanmo, and he made up the knife again. Sorry, I don't usually laugh in this kind of situation, unless I can't help it. Joe Luo patted Ivan on the shoulder, and forced a smile and said, hurry up and show them your things. Tell those big shots of the Ministry of Defense that arc reactor, which no one can imitate within 20 years, is easily solved by you. This is the first step you want to take to defeat Tony Stark. By the way, it is too much an eye-catcher to clean up all this garbage. Quote. Joe Luo glanced disgustedly at the broken copper and iron on the table, and almost jumped Hanmo angrily. Ivan nodded silently, excited inside, proving that he was better than Tony Stark. He had been waiting for this day for a long, long time. Who would know that Stark Industries, the brilliant and dazzling Empire State Building, hides the bitter blood and tears of 2 generations of the Venki family behind it. When Tony Stark was praised as a genius by everyone, he struggled to survive in the cold wind of Siberia. Ivan opened the black box that he had been carrying, and took out a heavy metal gun. It was a very large and very windy gun. The energy core of the miniature arc reactor was installed in the center, and the whole body was shining with silver-white cold light. He held the weapon in both hands, squeezed the trigger and aimed a shot at the thick steel plate not far away. The faint blue light beam erupted, and the 60mm steel plate was directly penetrated, leaving a large hole in the center. Another advantage of energy weapons is that the recoil is relatively small, and Ivan still stands motionless when he comes in for a shot. Enter. This kind of precise and powerful lethality made the eyes of the important officials of the Ministry of Defense shine bright, and Colonel Rhodes' black face even turned red slightly, excited. The estimated price of such a gun by Osborne Industries is about 0,000, which is almost the same as giving away for nothing compared to expensive steel armor. Hanmer on the side stared at the arc reactor on the energy weapon, as if he saw a cool beauty, almost couldn't help but want to jump over immediately. Hammer wanted to obtain a long-term order from the Ministry of Defense in the future by imitating Tony Stark's steel armor. That was a big deal, enough to bring Hanmer Industry to the top, but unfortunately he didn't have the ability, so he could only make a pile of rubbish to fool people, but he couldn't fool people. But after seeing the energy weapons, he started to move around again, especially the energy core, which was simply a remake of Arc Reactor. If it can be added to the steel armor of Hanmer Industries, it is a perfect fit. The replica of Iron Man is not even as good as Iron Man, because Tony made his own weapons on the steel battle suit and is more advanced than the entire Hanmer industry. Throwing aside his proud work, ex-wife, casually, this thing is no longer applicable, he is now full of energy weapons. Ivan's energy weapons have won unanimous praise from the Ministry of Defense, and the application prospects of the replica arc reactor are far more than that. That shiny gadget made the military boss no longer have to rack his brains to get a steel battle suit from Stark. So I've solved a big problem for Tony again, thank you so much for this. Joe Luo thought so in his heart, and at the same time, he was also thinking about how to blackmail him the next time he met this guy. After the actual measurement was over, General Rose was the first to praise him, and he almost took a pen to write the words, "I'm going to order this weapon," on the faces of the officials of the military committee. As for Hanmer's trash, who remembers the obnoxious things in such a happy time? On the way back, Joe Luo ran into Han Mo again with an eager attitude. The other party always brought the topic to Arc Reactor intentionally or unintentionally, but Joe Luo even dismissed the topic. He didn't want to cooperate with such a mindless capitalist, he was simply insulting his pure personality. Seeing Joe Luo talking about him, Hanmo forcibly suppressed the irritation in his heart and turned to draw up Ivan, who looked fierce. Listening to this guy chattering and chirping, Ivan lazily closed his eyes and put his hands on his chest. I just don't listen to you. From this perspective, it can be fully proved that geniuses are rarely willing to communicate on an equal basis with people with unequal IQs, whether it is Tony or Ivan, all of them are like this. Hammer, who had run into a wall twice, was furious. Since these guys are so ignorant of current affairs, he can only use some non-commercial methods. Hanmer Industry is not a small sheep, and it is not the first time that Hanmer has done such things by cleverly. For the military weapons seminar in a week, Tony and his Colonel Rhodes will attend together. Joe Luo returned to Washington, D.C., got in the car and prepared to return to Manhattan, and by the way he told Ivan. Ivan, you will revive the family honor, but it is not enough to catch up with Stark. Ivan was thoughtful, and he began to understand the rules of the game. Tony Stark's achievements could not be achieved by his outstanding scientific ability alone. He also needed a sufficiently broad platform. I see, boss. Dayan Mao Shang replied respectfully. This is the first time that he officially called roar Joe Luo. This strong and conceited man from Siberia finally had the meaning of surrender to Joe Luo. As night fell, Joe Luo's car arrived in Manhattan's Upper East Side, the most popular residential area for the wealthy and celebrities in New York. The home of General Ross is located here, and the military treats high-level generals quite generously, and General Ross is born in a famous northern door, so it will naturally not drop in price. The black car parked in front of a modern-style duplex villa. Joe Luo stepped forward and rang the doorbell. The servant opened the door. General Ross was already waiting in the study. The military is very satisfied with the energy weapon designed by Ivan. Compared with its powerful performance, the cost is not high, and it is strong and durable enough to be easily put into mass production. General Ross is very satisfied with Joe Luo's gift, and appreciates Joe Luo, a young man who is calm and capable but not impetuous. In the beginning, the relationship between the two parties each took the necessary benefits, but now it has become closer. Therefore, General Ross wants to increase the relationship between each other. Definitely, this is on the premise that he doesn't know Joe Luo's previous conviction. General Ross opened a bottle of brandy with great enthusiasm and invited Joe Luo to dinner. During the dinner, he began to inquire about Joe Luo. "Do you have a girl you like?" His tone was like a kind elder. "When I was in high school, I liked a girl in the next class. She is the school's cheerleader, she is very beautiful and has a hot body. But at that time I often transferred schools, from Los Angeles to New York, and then to Manhattan. At first I still had contact, but then the relationship gradually faded." Quote. Joe Luo ridiculed casually. He definitely understood that the general meant something, but he couldn't tell the history of his scumbag, right? Maybe General Ross would immediately pull out his gun to kill him. The feelings of a young age are always beautiful and short-lived. The road to the future is still very long, and it takes time to choose a life partner. Maybe she came to you by accident. The general pointed out and raised his glass to Joe Luo. Joe Luo did not dare to express his opinions directly. The general did not chase and beat him. He knew that this young man was very assertive and would not be easily influenced by his inner thoughts. He also believes that Betty can attract Joe Luo's attention, so that his daughter can get rid of the depression caused by Bruce Banner. The connection between the Ross family and Joe Luo will be closer, no longer just an alliance between interests. Tomorrow I am going to host a family dinner. If you have time, you can come over and join it. Rose chuckled. By the way, you probably haven't met my daughter yet, Betty. She is my little angel. I will introduce you at that time. I believe there will be more conversations between you young people. Joe Luo smiled slightly and nodded in agreement, but he felt a little weird in his heart. What happened to this inexplicable sense of sight that was pulled away from a blind date? Involuntarily came to mind a picture of a certain noble god being smashed like a sandbag by the Hulk. Dr. Banner, I was forced to. Joe Luo said shamelessly in his heart. Chapter 91. The dinner at the general's house started at 6:30. Joe Luo wore a tightly packed casual dress, which looked like carrying carefully prepared gifts, high-level cigars, treasured champagne and white tulips. This big liar is fully prepared for tonight's action. The door opened for him was a tall, elegant young woman. She has long, supple brown hair and delicate facial features. The azure blue eyes are very attractive, exuding a charming charm of intellectual restraint. "Nice to meet you, Miss Betty." Entering the door to put down the gift in his hand, Joe Luo took the initiative to stretch out his hand, and after a brief introduction of himself, he took advantage of the opportunity to send the bouquet of white tulips. Betty was suddenly called back to New York by her father from Virginia, and now she seems to be a little emotional. Since Banner's incident, her relationship with General Rose has become very fragile. Out of the good education and social etiquette originally received, Betty reluctantly shook hands with Rose, with a hint of reluctance in her indifferent attitude. Obviously she also understands what it means for a strange young man to appear at such a family party dinner. "I know that Miss Betty is a PhD in genetic biology from Corvo University, and my laboratory sent you an invitation before." Joe Luo doesn't care about the girl's perfunctory attitude. He has confidence in his own ability. "At that time I was in no mood, and I like the job of a teacher better than doing research." Betty was stunned for a moment, then remembered what happened before. "Really, I thought that any aspiring and ambitious scientist would not refuse the invitation of a strong scientific research institution." Joe Luo looked calm and talked freely, and began to discuss academic research with Betty. There are different ways to deal with different women. For a woman like Betty with a high degree of education and a good family background, don't think that just being rich and humorous can impress her. So Joe Luo took a different approach and brought her closer to herself unknowingly through more professional things. General Ross, who came out of the study at some unknown time, saw this scene with a satisfied smile on his face. After his daughter broke up with Banner, he introduced many young and promising elites to Betty in order to get her daughter out of the gloom, but they were all rejected one by one. Now it seems that Joe Luo chatted with his beloved daughter quite speculatively. If General Ross can understand what the two people are talking about, he might change his mind. Ahem, the pointer moved to 7 o'clock, and the general had no choice but to interrupt the lively conversation between the two. Miss Betty, this is the end of today. You are welcome to visit me. Joe Luo shrugged and smiled. The young man sitting at the dining table did not chat with Betty again as before, but turned his attention to General Rose. After chasing women, you can't just chase and fight hard, you need to get caught and take the initiative. The two men chatted about the future and the rise and fall of this country, and the laughing old man opened the bottle of champagne as a gift. Under the stimulation of strong alcohol, the atmosphere of this family dinner was even more lively. By the time the bell rang, it was 10 o'clock. Joe Luo smiled apologetically at Betty, helped the drunk General Ross and sent him back to the room. His feet are steady, not at all as if he had drunk half a bottle of wine. Out of courtesy reservations, Betty did not leave Joe Luo, but offered to see off the guests. Sending Joe Luo to the door, the lights flickered in the deep night, she complained a little and said, "You shouldn't let him drink so much. This is not something I can decide." Joe Luo looked helpless. It is undoubtedly impossible to refuse an elder's persuasion at the dinner table, especially with a strong character like General Rose. In less than an hour, the bottle of wine was at the bottom, and the other party yelled for Betty to take out the collection for many years, and she must pour herself out. "But your drink is really good. I've never seen anyone drink my father down." Betty covered her mouth and chuckled. She couldn't help but gradually eliminate her dislike for the young man in front of her. Because of my dissatisfaction before, I even hated Joe Luo. But through the conversation before the meal and the fun chat with his father at the table, the original bad impression was silently erased. When I come to visit again next time, I must bring some other gifts. Goodbye, beautiful lady. Joe Luo said goodbye with a smile, and then stepped into the night. Come here first today, this kind of thing can't be anxious. It's just that Joe Luo always feels like playing with fire. After all, his current identity is a real girlfriend. And he has even seen other people's father, and even Gwen is about to live in with him. If this one doesn't work, it is a proper sheer field. General Ross and Chief George, these two are not ordinary people. In an instant, Joe Luo even recovered the excitement of having to deal with the two big families and pedaling on two boats. According to the fundamental content of Murphy's Law, if something has the possibility of going bad, then no matter how small the possibility is, it will always happen. Betty can't remember how she got into this emotional game. Maybe it started with that reluctant family dinner, or the day when I visited Joe Luo's laboratory. Not long ago, she visited Joe Luo's laboratory and received a lot of surprises. The top-notch professional team, strong resources, and various cutting-edge scientific research results are eye-opening and awe-inspiring. The relationship between the two of them is also rapidly heating up unknowingly. Joe Luo did not exert too much effort in chasing Betty, and Betty is also trying to maintain her own reserve. However, this kind of ambiguous attitude is more effective than chasing. Beneath Betty's reserved and conservative surface, what lies hidden in his bones is actually a restless, rebellious factor. When she gradually became curious about Joe Luo, and then wanted to explore more deeply, everything was out of control. Betty, who was leaning against the bed with a pillow, glanced at the invitation on the table, which was the charity fundraising party of Stark Industries. As a good friend of Iron Man, Joe Luo will undoubtedly be there. After picking up the invitation card on the table and reading it carefully, Betty began to consider what kind of evening dress to wear tomorrow night. After a long night, when the tall Betty walked into the venue in a pearl-colored tube-top evening gown, it undoubtedly became the focus of everyone's attention. This made General Ross, who was holding his daughter, complacent. The reasonable tailoring outlines a graceful curve, and the fishtail-shaped hem shows a charming figure. The long linen hair was rolled up high, and the delicate face was illuminated by the light, and the snow-white skin showed a faint luster. Letting go of her father's arm, Betty looked around and she quickly saw the target. Joe Luo was holding a glass of wine and chatting with someone he didn't know. He was surrounded by Gwen in a black backless evening gown. The lively and cheerful beauty who always exudes youthful vitality seems to be Joe Luo's female companion tonight, holding each other's arm and leaning on him intimately. This scene made Betty stunned, and a sour emotion poured out from the bottom of her heart inexplicably. She wanted to turn around and leave, but at the same time the strong unwillingness and pride in her heart stopped her abruptly. She tried to make a smiling face and walked towards Joe Luo with an elegant gait. As the daughter of a general, how could she run away in such a desperate way? The young man in the middle of the field actually noticed Betty's arrival early in the morning. Pretending to be ignorant, he wandered among the crowd holding Gwen, who was in a trance. "Hi, Betty, it looks so beautiful today. You see, so many people can't take their eyes off." When Betty approached too much to pretend to be invisible, Joe Luo proactively called roar to the tall girl who came up. "Oh, what about you? Perhaps because of the complex emotions in the bottom of my heart, Betty is different from the usual grace and reserved, but is exceptionally aggressive." Facing the provocative questioning, Joe Luo smiled triumphantly, knowing that the fish had taken the bait, and then changed the subject. Gwen beside him remained silent, his mind filled with various intricate emotions. To the similar but different reactions of the two girls, Joe Luo had a panoramic view, sighing that women are troublesome but could not resist the urge to die. "I'm a little tired, Joe, I want to find a place to rest for a while." Gwen bit her lower lip lightly. She looked at the man holding her around and chatting with Betty wittily, feeling a little uncomfortable in her heart. "It just so happens that I also have some important things I want to talk to you. Do you have time, Joe?" Betty put down the wine glass in her hand. She drank a lot of champagne, her cheeks flushed slightly. Joe Luo was overjoyed in his heart and coughed slightly, then without squinting his eyes, he said in a very serious tone. "There is a viewing platform on the top floor of this hotel, which is generally not open to the public. Why don't we take the elevator up to chat together?" Betty first reacted. If it was another strange man who dared to make such a frivolous request to her, a slap in the face would have passed. She just wanted to reject it straightforwardly, but when she saw Gwen holding Joe Luo's arm, she suddenly changed her words. "Okay, I also think it's a bit too boring here." She tried hard to hold her chest up, her chin slightly raised, like a proud little swan, showing her proud capital. Naturally, Gwen wouldn't go away. She clung to Joe Luo's body tightly, as if swearing her sovereignty. The story of two little white rabbits and a big bad wolf has officially begun. The Nomad Hotel was designed by the famous French architect Jacques Garcia. I personally like this European classic aristocratic style. Joe Luo walked on the promenade with two beautiful girls who were impeccable in terms of temperament and appearance, and showed off their knowledge wantonly. One hand was placed on Betty's waist, and the other was placed on Gwen's bare white shoulders. I met many people along the way, all with envy or surprise in their eyes. When Joe Luo left the hall with Betty in his arms, General Ross, who was talking to the big shots, also saw it. Not only was he not angry about this, he also smiled happily, thinking that these two little guys were making progress very quickly. Definitely this is because the general didn't see Gwen next to him, or maybe he would just take out his gun and burst that little fool. The young man, who seemed to have been blessed with boundless beauty, while explaining the origin and characteristics of the hotel to the two ladies, gradually grasped the initiative of the conversation. Watching the tit-for-tat confrontation between Betty and Gwen, occasionally inserted a few words, cleverly maintaining the balance between the two sides, maintaining a vaguely neutral attitude. The three of them stepped into the elevator in this weird atmosphere. This is a dedicated elevator for VIP guests, which can lead to viewing platforms that are not open to the outside world all the way. A group of people stepped on the soft carpet, dim lights illuminating the enclosed space, and the interior decoration was quite stylish and had an antique taste. Suddenly quieted down for a while, the two girls with their own thoughts, their eyes wandering non-stop, invariably stayed on the young man's body, and then quickly moved away. The elevator began to rise slowly, and Joe Luo guided the topic quietly. He roughly grasped the different personalities of the two girls. Betty's conservative appearance is actually full of rebellious factors and adventurous spirit, pursuing an exciting and dangerous life in her bones. Gwen, on the other hand, is on the contrary. Behind his carefree, cheerful and lively character, there are sensitive and soft inner characteristics hidden. On the one hand, he stirred Betty's emotions, on the other hand, he calmed Gwen in time. The result is that the former is desperately approaching him, and the latter is almost leaning against his arms. For others, it was simply a terrifying situation in the Shira field, and Joe Luo was forced to play it as a welfare field. Suddenly, the steadily rising elevator suddenly shook, and a sudden sense of weightlessness came. As if falling down quickly, the displayed floor numbers flickered irregularly, and even the overhead lights became indeterminate. Diaresis, don't be afraid, I am here. Joe Luo calmly embraced the two girls who threw into his arms, and calmed them with gentle words. After a few seconds, the elevator gradually stabilized, and the blinking lights stopped shaking, but the number of floors dimmed. The elevator seemed to have stopped in the middle, neither falling nor climbing up. It seemed that there was some malfunction. Don't worry, the elevators in the hotel have safety devices. Joe Luo comforted Gwen, who was trembling slightly. Although Betty was much calmer by comparison, the blinking eyes still showed her Nuo Dahao inner panic. Joe Luo pressed the red emergency button and had a simple communication with the outside through the emergency call device. After expressing a sincere apology, the outside staff stated that they would immediately dispatch technicians to carry out repairs. However, 10 minutes later, a voice came from the call device again, and the other party's tone was full of tension and apology. The elevator happened to be stuck between two floors. More professional technicians had to be hired. It would take about half an hour to 40 minutes. It's terrible. Betty rarely showed annoyed emotions. And Gwen clutched Joe Luo's arm tightly. This closed environment and the fear of not knowing what was happening outside made her eager to get more security from Joe Luo. Can you make them faster? Is there a camera here? Betty leaned in the corner of the elevator, holding her chest with her hands. Obviously this sudden situation made her very uncomfortable. Obviously no. After all, this is the VIP area. Joe Luo looked up and spread his hands. Don't they often overhaul? It's really depressing. In Betty's opinion, it is too hard to be locked in the enclosed space of the elevator for half an hour. She just wanted to talk to Joe Luo to divert her attention, but found that Gwen's arm had wrapped around Joe Luo's neck. Gwen, who had been silent for almost all night, stood on his toes slightly, sticking to the other side to tell his feelings. The enclosed space released Gwen's inner wildness, and his surging mood was like a volcanic eruption, which drowned her at once. The two people interacted with each other, and the voice of conversation echoed in the enclosed space of the elevator. Betty on the side was at a loss and could only stare at the two dumbfoundedly. Judging from the current situation, Joe Luo turned out to be the passive one. He leaned back against the elevator wall, while Gwen was pursuing him every step of the way, as if he would not give up until he was defeated. The special environment made Gwen particularly excited and warlike. While Betty looked at all this blankly, her face quickly turned red. A forceful arm stretched out and grabbed Betty's arm. She instinctively wanted to avoid it, but she didn't make any substantial movements at all. What followed was a sudden fierce war. After some tentative contact, the two sides gradually began to collide locally, and then a fierce all-out war broke out. From the beginning of the tug-of-war, to almost one-sided crushing, Betty collapsed weakly, her beautiful eyes filled with confusion. How could the two little white rabbits be eaten by the big bad wolf in such a daze? Could it be the hallucinations caused by my drinking too much? The fighting between the three people continued until the elevator maintenance personnel arrived. The dizzy two women and Joe Luo came to the room on the top floor to sober up, but after a while, the fighting reignited. What? Viewing platform. Who would go to see the scenery at this time? When the morning sun shines through the tulle curtains into the luxuriously decorated room, 4 pairs of high heels can be seen thrown on the soft carpet. Betty's eyelashes moved, her dim consciousness gradually awake, her sleepy eyes opened, and she didn't seem to notice anything abnormal. She subconsciously squeezed towards the warm back, wanting to sleep for a while. It was about 10 seconds later that she was completely awake from her lazy drowsiness. Oh my God! Betty screamed and sat up, looking at everything in front of her in disbelief. She had never thought that things would develop so fast, but she found that apart from a hint of shame in her heart, she had no other negative emotions. And many more. Betty suddenly noticed something wrong, and through the dappled light coming through the curtains, she saw another woman. Unbelievable screams awakened Joe Luo and Gwen, who were sleeping. Then there was another scream, and the two women separated Joe Luo in the middle, screaming in panic and shame at the same time. The sharp high decibel cry made Joe Luo couldn't help but block his ears, and even wondered if the hotel glass would be shattered. Seeing the angry eyes projected over him, Joe Luo, as the instigator, raised his hands sincerely and surrendered. I can explain all of this. The noisy morning slowly came to an end. Although the two of them still had a grudge about what happened last night, they were able to keep calm anyhow and didn't fight on the spot. Betty has an inexplicable emotion surging in her heart. Although Betty has a good impression of the man in front of him who is beyond the normal relationship, but it will not reach the level of abandoning rational enthusiasm. She is different from Gwen, who has been completely defeated and has a relatively mild attitude. It's just that something has happened, and nothing can be undone. Seeing the mess around and the things thrown everywhere on the ground, Betty couldn't help covering her face. She never thought that she, with a good tutor and a generous background, would actually do such a thing. If you feel unacceptable about this, you can push all your faults on me. It was all your fault. It's ridiculous, oh my God. Betty looked at Joe Luo, who had extremely great military exploits, and said angrily. Especially Gwen, who looked confused, looked extremely dazzling. If there is no other person around the young man, maybe this will be a good start. Betty does not regret delivering everything she has, but this is not a two-player game. She couldn't accept it at all. I will forget these things today. Betty glared at Joe Luo, then rolled over and got up and began to tidy up the things on the ground. She decided to keep a distance from Joe Luo in the future, and perhaps return to school to continue as a teacher is the most correct choice. Betty, shut up. I don't want to hear you say one more word. I mean, don't want me to accept this absurd relationship. No, I want to tell you that the black one is Gwen's, and you should be the red one on the sofa. Quote, quote. Betty's face flushed red, and she picked up something beside her and threw it towards Joe Luo. She quickly dressed herself up, cleaned up briefly, and then slammed the door and left. At this time, Gwen also escaped from Joe Luo's arms and began to clean up quietly. Gwen, don't talk to me. Gwen turned his head and glared at Joe Luo. She can't accept it. Can I accept it? Gwen quickly cleaned up and walked out the door. Before leaving, he turned his head and threw an inexplicable look at Joe Luo. Come to me after you change your attitude, fool. Pump. Joe Luo lay back on the soft bed, recalling the battle last night involuntarily in his mind. Oh, I was accidentally impulsive again. It's clear that I've passed the age of being young and ignorant. How can I still be such a wave? Is this my nature? He thought and thought, but couldn't draw a conclusion that could convince him, and finally chose to give up thinking about this topic. It's a pity that I didn't have the opportunity to take pictures last night, such a good opportunity. Thinking of this, Joe Luo couldn't help but slap himself in the face. You beast, why are you still thinking about this kind of problem at this time? He got up and sat up, began to pack himself and prepare to leave. No, you can't waste time here, the world is still waiting for me to save it. As for them, just let them calm down, in the end they will understand that I love them. Quote. When Joe Luo went to Neon, little Spider-Man got rid of the venom and found himself again. Having had a lost experience, he seemed to see the struggling soul in the enemy before him. So he was afraid of fighting, hoping to awaken the good personality that he didn't even recognize, but Green Goblin didn't keep his hands, and all kinds of weapons launched indiscriminate attacks like crazy. Ha ha ha, Spider-Man, that's it for tonight. I will come to you again in a while, don't let your guard down, ha 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 ha. Seeing more and more law enforcement officers in this city, Green Goblin, who knew that two fists were hard to beat four hands, resolutely chose to retreat. After leaving behind an extremely arrogant sentence, he quickly escaped. Little Spider-Man yelled angrily. Seeing that the law enforcement officers gradually gathered, he was unwilling to stay and turned and retreated. While Spider-Man was fighting Green Goblin, Harry, who was handling affairs at the company, quickly received news of an attack on his apartment. Anxious Harry called his father's phone for the first time, but it didn't get through. So, when Harry hurried back to the apartment, he could only see the room of his father, who was designated by the police as the scene of the accident. Soon, Harry knew what was going on here. Facing the secret room full of high-tech weapons in his father's room, Harry was completely blindfolded. Mr. Harry, did you know that your father was making these weapons illegally? Just as Harry's head kept crashing, a fat police officer asked beside him. Harry, he can't think normally now, he can't understand what happened. I don't know why there is such a secret room full of weapons in my father's room, and I don't know what the flight skateboard and the demon mask represent. Maybe Harry knew it in his heart, but he would rather not know it now. Mr. Harry, seeing Harry didn't respond, the police officer yelled again a little impatiently. Judging from the situation at the scene, the missing Osborn is the attacker Green Goblin. And Harry was the son of Norman Osborn, and this police officer would not have much patience with the criminal's son. Hey, Harry first. Just when the police officer was about to reach out to pat the dazed Harry, his outstretched hand was suddenly caught. Be quiet. It was Joe Luo who grabbed the police officer's hand. He just hurried back and heard that this happened, and he immediately felt it. Are you? Officer Wool, who was grabbed his hand, looked at the young man holding his hand curiously. I am Harry's friend, and I don't think he is suitable for questioning right now. This is not the right time, Mr. Harry, but... As soon as the policeman spoke unceremoniously, the communicator on his body rang. Hello, Chief. Yes, understand. Putting down the phone, the policeman smiled at Joe Luo and retreated with someone. Wait, Joe Luo called to the policeman again. As for things here, Osborn Industries has detailed filing and research materials. If you want to take these weapons away as evidence, it is best to make a special record. I don't want Osborn's latest product to be leaked, you know what it means. Quote. I see, sir. We don't have to take these weapons, as long as you provide us with a detailed list. He is just a little police officer, but he is not stupid enough to make trouble here. After being caught off guard at the beginning, Joe Luo turned the matter over to the Public Relations Department of the Osborn Group. Every year Osborn spends so much money to raise them, it's not just plain rice, and he has to show his true skills when he needs to do something. And Harry was thrown back to his room to rest by Joe Luo. Today's incident hit him too much. On the one hand, Harry still couldn't believe that the demon mask attacker was his father. On the other hand, Harry had to worry about his father's current situation. Judging from the extent of the destruction of the apartment, there must have been a fierce battle there, but I don't know what the result of the battle is now, and where his father is now. The police's on-site investigation did not end until 8 o'clock in the evening. But they still left a group of squads stationed here in the apartment to prevent Norman from coming back suddenly, but they still treated Norman as the biggest suspect. However, they did not notice that Harry sneaked out of his home without knowing it, and drove out of New York City by himself. 2 hours later, Harry arrived at a manor in the suburbs of New York City alone. This is a manor of the Osborn family, and no one comes here usually. Pushing open the heavy gate of the manor, Harry took a deep breath, and then stepped in. The wooden gate slowly closed behind Harry, isolating everything from the outside. Although it is still noon, there is not much light in this castle-like building. Harry walked silently on the smooth wooden floor, down a long corridor. When he reached the end of the corridor, Harry stood still at the door of his father's room. After standing quietly outside the closed door for a few minutes, Harry slowly raised his head at last, with a firm gaze flashing in his eyes. Then he put his hand on the doorknob. With slight force, the closed wooden door was slowly pushed open by Harry. Without hesitation, Harry strode into the room the next moment. After Harry entered the room, the door closed again. And this room looked darker than the corridor. Huge amounts of floor-to-ceiling windows were closed tightly, and there was almost no sunlight coming in. However, even though the light was weak, Harry could still see the figure sitting on the sofa with his back to him. Harry, my son, are you here? It seemed that someone was coming in behind him. The figure sitting on the sofa moved, and then a voice suddenly came out. It was Norman Osborn. He actually ran straight out of New York City, but Harry obviously knew he was here. Although I don't know what happened. But I know that my father will not do things that hurt others. So, if you are still my father, then surrender yourself. Looking at the man sitting on the sofa, Harry said calmly. Hearing Harry's words, the figure suddenly stood up from the sofa, turning around and speaking softly. Harry, I definitely won't hurt anyone. If you want me to surrender, then I will. I'm your father, Harry. However, facing Norman's willingness to surrender, Harry silently took a step back and put his right hand behind his waist. No, you are not my father. When Green Goblin appeared, I felt something was wrong. Although I know that my father's consciousness must still be somewhere in this body, you are not him now. You will not surrender, you will only continue to cause more harm. Quote. Facing Norman approaching slowly, Harry suddenly said. Then, while Norman was still trying to get closer to himself, Harry instantly raised the pistol behind his waist and aimed at Norman. Ha ha, I didn't expect you to be so smart. It seems that you must be very puzzled these days, watching your familiar father become someone you don't know. Norman was not nervous at all when Harry was pointed with a pistol, but instead asked with a laugh. No matter what happens, I will save my father again. You are just a deputy. Watching his father keep talking unfamiliar words, Harry's phone tightened even more. You really can shoot. Although you were right, now I am a different personality, but I am still your father in essence. I don't realize that you would really shoot me. Looking at Harry, Norman said nonchalantly. Having said that, Norman continued to walk closer to Harry, and he seemed certain that Harry would not shoot. Boom. Suddenly a gunshot sounded from the quiet manor, which alarmed a swarm of birds resting around the manor. Boom, boom, boom. After the first shot, there were 3 more shots in the manor, and then it stopped. In the gloomy room, Harry fell embarrassedly in the corner of the wall, the gun in his hand already dropped on the floor 3 meters away from him. Norman stood in front of him, the expression in his eyes was extremely cold. Harry's thoughts were good, but the results were unsatisfactory. He really wouldn't really kill his father, so what he just shot was aimed at Norman's calf, as long as he loses his mobility. But even without any equipment, Norman at the moment's physical fitness can completely escape Harry's bullets. So, after avoiding Harry's 4 bullets, Norman had already rushed in front of him and kicked him into the corner. Little Harry, did you surprise me a little bit? However, you made a mistake when you came here. Slowly squatting down in front of Harry, Norman's eyes flashed with a strange pale green light. Roar! Even though he had just been kicked severely by Norman, Harry still had to resist, and when Norman approached, he suddenly punched him on the head. Simply raising his hand, Norman squeezed Harry's fist. The huge amounts of power in his hand squeezed Harry's bones with a crisp sound, and there was a boundless pain, but Harry gritted his teeth and said nothing. Just when Norman was about to smash Harry's fist, the green light in his eyes suddenly dimmed for a moment, and the hand holding Harry's fist also relaxed at the same time. After being able to break free, Harry quickly got up from the ground and quickly rushed towards the pistol on the ground not far away. Harry, run away. You are not his opponent. Norman, who let go of Harry, seemed to be frozen suddenly, his whole body trembling violently, and at the same time he yelled Harry to run away. Norman's original personality was finally aroused when his son was hurt, but obviously it was impossible to regain control of the body again. He could only simply stop the brutal personality. It seems that I still have some feelings for my son. After Norman finished shouting that sentence, there was a strange voice as before, and the brutal personality reappeared. But now that you have made a choice, don't come out to make trouble. Roar! With a low cry, the brutal personality once again suppressed Norman's remaining good personality, and quickly got up from the ground to chase Harry. Boom, boom. However, the delay of Norman's kind personality was enough for Harry to take the pistol and aim again. Without hesitation, Harry shot directly at his father's 2 calves. This time Norman didn't evade, and the 2 bullets directly hit his 2 calves, causing him to fall to the ground again as soon as he got up. Father, I know you are still inside. You must fight him. Harry had just heard his father's voice, so he held the pistol and yelled at Norman. Only the last 2 bullets were left in the gun. Hee, your father is gone, don't expect him to come out to rescue you. The wound from the bullet was being repaired quickly, and the 2 bullets were slowly squeezed out by the muscles. After a while, he would be able to recover as before. The power of the devil brought Green Goblin's strength to a higher level. Watching the 2 wounds on his father's leg stop bleeding quickly and slowly heal, Harry cursed and ran outside. No injury like this can subdue Norman, and Harry has no other way. Ha 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 ha, run away, little Harry, I will catch up with you. Watching Harry rush out of the room, Norman yelled loudly on the ground. Quickly rushing out of the manor, Harry quickly rushed into his sports car. Without hesitation, Harry had already started the car and rushed out the next moment. And not long after Harry drove out, a green shadow broke through the window of Norman's room in the manor. Stepping on the flight skateboard, Norman, fully armed again, chased Harry in the direction of Harry's escape. Looking at Norman's equipment, there is obviously a weapon chamber hidden by Norman Osborn in this manor. With his feet on the accelerator pedal to the end, Harry was racing at the maximum speed the car could reach. Fortunately, it belongs to the suburbs and there are not many buildings. Harry can temporarily prevent Norman from catching up with the speed advantage of the sports car on the straight road. However, once rushed into the city, Harry and the civilians in the city were in a bad situation. Therefore, Harry directly used the in-vehicle intelligence system to call the police. I'm Harry Osborn, I found my father. He is now flying from Green Avenue outside Manhattan towards the city. That's right, just flying here, my father is the attacker. Although he didn't want to admit it, Harry still couldn't involve other innocent people for his father. Little Harry, you really make me look at me. A familiar voice came across the phone. Joe. Harry was taken aback and looked down carefully, and found that the police call did not know when it was replaced with an unfamiliar phone number. Okay, I found where you are now, and I will be right there. Joe Luo didn't talk nonsense with Harry, and hung up the phone directly. No way, after all, Norman Osborn is still the president of Osborn Industries. If the public knows that he is Green Goblin, it will have a great impact on the reputation of Osborn Industry. So Joe Luo blocked Harry's communication system in advance, and this kind of thing still has to be solved by himself. Astonished listening to the other side hanging up the phone, Harry was stunned for a moment, then decisively slammed on the accelerator and charged wildly. He has realized Joe Luo's intentions, and he also understands that he should not be able to contact the police now. There is still a distance from the city. If the week comes in time, it should have not rushed into the city when Norman caught up with him. However, if Norman really catches up in advance, Harry can only change direction and cannot take Norman into the city. The galloping sports car blew a strong wind on the avenue, and a green figure followed in the middle of the air a few hundred meters away. Sir, the wireless signal has just been intercepted. Green Goblin at the moment is flying towards the center of Manhattan on Green Avenue. The moment Harry finished the call, Jarvis, who was also monitoring his wireless channel, had already reported the situation to Tony. Okay, it's time for Iron Man to play. Tony, with a high-spirited look coquettishly trimmed his meticulous hair, quickly put on a steel battle suit. After solving the problems he encountered, he has changed back to the Tony Stark of that sassy bag. He hasn't experienced the major events in the future, always thinking of something to show off. Boom. 10 seconds later, a fiery red figure rushed out from another direction in New York City and hurried towards Manhattan. At the same time, the little Spider-Man who had been following this incident also took action, swung cobweb and flew quickly towards Green Avenue. Behind little Spider-Man, the police officers who finally discovered the problem began to take action. A dozen police cars slammed their sirens and rushed towards Green Avenue. However, due to the conditions of the cars and the many buildings in New York, the speed of the police is much slower than that of the Spider-Man. In this way, Norman chased Harry towards downtown Manhattan on the flight skateboard, and Tony drove the Iron Man towards the other direction at high speed. Spider-Man Peter was also desperately rushing, followed by a large number of policemen, and Joe Luo who was rushing over from Queens. Although Joe Luo didn't want to make things big, but this kind of thing couldn't be transferred by his will. A Green Goblin caused chaos throughout New York City, and several forces were trying their best to reach the target location as soon as possible. The black sports car galloped past the wide avenue, and Harry at the moment was almost about to rush into Manhattan, New York. Green Goblin has caught up. Harry can't risk putting many civilians in danger and continue rushing into Manhattan. He wants to lead Green Goblin away. Determined in his heart, Harry suddenly slammed the steering wheel to the right, and the black sports car that had been racing on the road drifted to the side of the trail. After the black sports car in front turned flexibly, Green Goblin, who had been following it, turned. However, compared to the sports car that is restricted by terrain on the ground, the Norman in midair flight once again approached the sports car in front. Not long after Harry turned sharply, Norman was close enough to catch up from behind. Under his feet, the flight skateboard suddenly opened, and a small rocket projected out of it. The tail flame of the rocket was reflected in the rearview mirror, and Harry just felt cold sweat all over his body. At this moment, Harry's adrenaline was secreted rapidly, his body and mind were highly unified, and he judged in an instant what he should do next. With his eyes fixed on the rearview mirror, Harry had predicted the target location of the rockets, and then slammed the steering wheel with both hands, keeping the accelerator pedal under his feet. Boom! After evading 3 rounds in a row, the 4th rocket exploded after hitting the rear of the car. The huge amounts of power of the explosion directly overturned Harry's car. The sports car rolled from the middle of the road to the side of the road. The entire rear of the car was blown up, and flames were still burning from the location of the explosion. Although Harry's car has an explosion-proof device that will not explode, Norman has already chased it from behind on the flight skateboard. Climbing out of the car embarrassedly, Harry coughed uncontrollably on the ground with blood all over his face. However, now is not the time to worry about his injury. Norman has slowly flew up to Harry on the flight skateboard. "Little Harry, I'm still catching up with you." Harry, who didn't care about the ground, was already in a semi-conscious state. Norman, who had completely transformed into another person, shouted to Harry on the ground through the green demon mask. "Why aren't you talking? Don't you still want to save me? Why is there nothing?" Seeing Harry didn't respond, Norman moved closer. "It seems that I fainted. If this is the case, it will save a bit of pain." Seeing Harry fainted on the ground, Green Goblin was about to kill him directly. After all, Harry is Norman's only son and the only concern for his remaining personality. Only by getting rid of him can he completely control this body in the future. While suppressing the fierce counterattack of another character in his body, Norman had slowly stretched the mechanical arm with the alloy knife to Harry on the ground. Just when Green Goblin's alloy knife was about to hit Harry's body, a strong laser beam suddenly shot from above him, directly breaking Green Goblin's alloy knife. Roar! Then, a big red figure rushed in front of Green Goblin, and Iron Man Tony finally arrived. Raising his arm to face Green Goblin in front of him, Tony faced Green Goblin imposingly. "Diaresis, leave me away from this kid." "Iron Man, Tony Stark, I didn't expect you to show up." After retracting the half-alloy knife that had been shot off, Green Goblin looked at the opposite Tony and said calmly. Tony's appearance really exceeded Green Goblin's expectations. If he in the half-covered armor were before, it would not be Iron Man's opponent. But now he can no longer be said to be a pure human. Even in the face of Iron Man, he is confident and not at all shocked. "Are you Norman Osborn? I really didn't expect a father to do such a thing to his own new hand son." The results of the JARVIS scan told him that the man in front of him turned out to be Norman Osborn, Harry's father. This was a truth that Tony had never expected. "The former Norman Osborn is dead. I am the new Norman Osborn. I will lead this city to the great Mephisto." Facing Tony's questioning, Green Goblin suddenly shouted out Kai in excitement. "It turns out that you are crazy, so I can only make a heavy hand. It may be a little painful, but I don't think you will mind." Hearing Green Goblin's incomprehensible high roar, Tony frowned, raised his palm and shot it out. Green Goblin, who had been prepared for a long time, controlled the flight skateboard under his feet and flexibly avoided the palm cannon and galloped back. How could the speed of the flight skateboard be compared to Iron Man? The flame of Tony's jet skyrocketed instantly and he had caught up with the fleeing Green Goblin. At the same time, 2 rows of rapid-fire machine guns have been exposed on the shoulders of the steel battle suit, and aiming at the Green Goblin in front is a rapid fire. JARVIS has already assessed the defensive power of the armor suit on Green Goblin. The rapid-fire bullet is not enough to threaten his life, but it is enough to seriously injure him. However, as Tony shot the bullet, Green Goblin in the front suddenly threw 3 small metal spheres back, which were miniature bombs. Boom, boom, boom. 3 consecutive violent explosions knocked out Tony's bullets, and Green Goblin pulled away again with the cover of the explosion behind him. Let you run away, I don't want to face any more. Flexibly avoiding the explosive shockwave, Tony violently accelerated to the top of Green Goblin. 2 laser beams directly blocked Green Goblin's path, and Tony had landed on the flight skateboard in the next second. An iron fist blasted towards Green Goblin's face, and Tony had to teach this crazy fellow. Bang! Green Goblin, who had received Tony's punch, almost fell off the flight skateboard, but he quickly stabilized. Ah! Seeing that he lost to Tony, Green Goblin's eyes flashed with a black light and suddenly he screamed wildly. Regardless of the hysterical Green Goblin, Tony raised his palm cannon and aimed it at him again. However, just as Tony was about to fire the laser again, a group of black shadows suddenly poured out of Green Goblin and immediately rushed towards Tony. What? JARVIS, use the internal circulation system instead. Seeing that group of dark shadows rushed towards him, Tony reacted very quickly and hurriedly shouted. He was worried that this was a poison gas attack set on the Green Goblin armor, but his steel battle suit would not be afraid of the poison gas. JARVIS's reaction speed was very fast. Before the black shadow had touched the steel armor, it had completely isolated the steel battle suit from the outside air. Then, Tony was enveloped in by the black shadow, and Green Goblin kicked him out with one kick. JARVIS, why hasn't the vision been provided yet? Feeling he was falling down quickly, Tony shouted unexpectedly. Although his vision is blocked, JARVIS does not rely on the naked eye to see things. Various high-tech testing equipment can allow Tony to find the target with his eyes closed. Sir, none of the infrared scanning and other detection systems can break through this black fog. We have become blind. Just after Tony asked that sentence, JARVIS quickly replied. The black shadow that enveloped Tony didn't know how to make the detection system on the steel battle suit impossible to penetrate. Use gravity detection instead. Adjust the falling posture, we have to pull it back. Although this happened beyond Tony's expectations, he still shouted calmly. Although JARVIS has also become blind, Tony has been falling down because of the gravity of the Earth. Therefore, gravity can be used to judge the situation of at the moment, and then the injection system can be adjusted to prevent it from falling further. Yes, sir. JARVIS reacted very quickly, and within a second after Tony finished shouting, he adjusted the flight direction of the steel battle suit. Then, Tony felt his falling body stabilized. However, even though he doesn't have to worry about falling to death, Tony is still shrouded in black mist, completely unaware of the situation outside. Just as Tony was thinking about what this black mist was, there was a sound of metal corrosion on the surface of his steel battle suit. Sir, there is an unknown substance in the black mist corroding the surface metal of the steel battle suit. After 3 minutes, the steel battle suit will completely lose its protection ability. Tony hasn't asked a question yet. JARVIS has already told him the current situation. What kind of attack is this? Fire bombs. Although it was not clear what was attacking him, Tony responded. Dozens of incendiary bombs were quickly shot from the arms and legs of the steel battle suit, instantly igniting the area around Tony. However, these incendiary bombs only released the flames at the moment they were ejected, and they were completely extinguished in the next second. It seems that these black mists still have the effect of extinguishing fire. JARVIS, increase the power, let's rush out. Since there were no incendiary bombs, and the steel battle suit was still being corroded, Tony had no choice but to issue such an order. Maybe he can get rid of these weird black mists with the super high speed of the steel battle suit. Yes, sir. The flame of the jet at the foot of the steel battle suit soared, directly pushing Tony towards the sky. And the black mist has been surrounding Tony, unable to get rid of it. Iron Man, Tony Stark, you can't get rid of the power of the Lord of Hell. Seeing the black mist rising into the sky, the black mist in Green Goblin's eyes continued to flow, and he shouted hoarsely. Without Iron Man's obstruction, Green Goblin drove the flight skateboard in Harry's direction again. Although almost all of his equipment had been disabled by Tony, he was still able to deal with a comatose Harry. Just when Green Goblin was about to approach Harry, a translucent cobweb suddenly stuck to the skateboard from behind. Uncle Osborne, it's too late to stop now. Pulling the flight skateboard hard to prevent Green Goblin from flying towards Harry, the Spider-Man Peter who finally arrived yelled loudly. Peter always thinks that Green Goblin can be saved, as long as he wakes up his normal personality. Spider-Man, I won't let you stop me twice. Ah! Green Goblin turned his head to see Peter screaming. Then, Green Goblin stepped on the flight skateboard suddenly, and the whole person jumped out of the flight skateboard in midair, and rushed straight to Peter behind. While flying in midair, Green Goblin's body was also changing rapidly. He was emitting black smoke all over his body, and his body swelled continuously, almost bursting his armor. The demon mask that had been worn on his face seemed to be fused with Green Goblin, and the eyes that showed through had been completely shrouded in a layer of black mist. Die! The mutated Green Goblin waved the big right hand of the fan and grabbed the little Spider-Man. However, in the face of Green Goblin's fatal attack, little Spider-Man only quickly fired 2 cobwebs and glued them to Green Goblin's hands. Then, Peter yanked. Huge amounts of power directly brought Green Goblin's body down and quickly swooped down, and the attack naturally lost its effect. Pulling Green Goblin down from above, Peter put his foot on his open chest. With the power of kicking on Green Goblin, the little Spider-Man turned flexibly in the air and fell towards the ground. Green Goblin fell to the ground embarrassedly, and the not-so-solid grass smashed a hole for him. However, the mutated Green Goblin quickly got up from the pit, and the bones all over his body made a crisp sound. He tore the armor that had been ragged in a few strokes and threw it aside. At the moment, he didn't need these things at all. Brush! In the next moment, Green Goblin, who was dressed lightly, disappeared instantly, and was already behind Peter when he reappeared, and his skeletal fist blasted towards Peter. Peter, who was reminded by spider telepathy, had no time to dodge the key and let the punch hit his right shoulder. Little Spider-Man, who had been backed by this heavy punch, had an ugly face and stabilized his figure. Relying on the young man's tenacity to admit defeat, he rushed up again and started a close hand-to-hand fight with Green Goblin. The two of you come and go, fist and shadow flying, relying on the strong physical quality of both sides to exceed the normal number of people. The fight is inextricable. Just as the two were fighting incomprehensibly, Harry, who had fainted on the grass behind him, gradually woke up. Ahem. Getting up from the ground with difficulty, Harry was going to the civilians who were frightened next to him for help. He was hurt very much. Harry didn't expect to wake up his father anymore, maybe as Norman said before. The original he is dead, now he is a brand new person. But Harry still had deep feelings for Norman, who was his father after all, although Green Goblin at the moment looked more like a monster. So, since Spider-Man has appeared, let him subdue his crazy father. Just when Harry staggered 2 steps, there was a rush of police sirens on the street in the distance, and the New York police finally arrived. However, in the face of a battle between 2 Inhumans, even if the police come, it will not be too effective. At most, it will protect nearby civilians and reduce the possibility of accidental injury. It just made Harry strange that Joe Luo hadn't appeared until now. Obviously he was the first person to rush over after receiving the news. Did he give up on me? A thought suddenly sounded in Harry's heart, and then it began to magnify uncontrollably. Does he want this opportunity to get rid of the 2 of us, father and son, so that Osborn Industry will all be his? Even further thinking, will his father become what he is now? Spider-Man, you can't stop me. You can't stop the coming of the devil. After fighting for a long time, Green Goblin couldn't defeat little Spider-Man, and he suddenly roared again. What devil? You thought I was afraid of you if you yelled loudly. The little Spider-Man now doesn't think of the guy in front of him as the respectable Uncle Osborn at all. This is a crazy monster. However, just as little Spider-Man spoke back, he suddenly saw Green Goblin's eyes covered in black mist. In a trance, little Spider-Man seemed to see a figure in the darkness through Green Goblin's eyes, suddenly tranced, and fell directly to the ground from the air. What's the matter? The little Spider-Man who fell to the ground was in a daze, wondering what was wrong with him. Although he fell from midair, he didn't get hurt because of his low height and the very physical fitness of little Spider-Man. However, the situation of little Spider-Man at the moment was not good at all. The glance Green Goblin just made not only made him unable to concentrate, but also put his whole body in an unexplainable pain. Ha ha ha, surrender to the devil's feet. Seeing little Spider-Man kneeling on the ground in pain, Green Goblin laughed and rushed over. On the way, he also picked up the half-alloy knife thrown away by him on the ground. Shot. Facing the sudden change of Spider-Man and getting into danger, the police on the side decisively issued the order. However, Green Goblin's fast movement evaded most of the bullets, and only a small part of it touched him, but it was unable to cause enough injuries. Just when Green Goblin was laughing wildly to end the Spider-Man, suddenly a weird man in a red and black tights jumped out, and 2 alloy knives in his hand crossed to block Green Goblin's attack. "Oh, what are you doing to this little guy? Oh, my goodness, he's still a young guy." Deadpool, who arrived at the critical moment, made a strange cry, making a shy look. "Ah, is it okay to let him go? Please, if necessary, I can replace him." After being disgusted by Deadpool's sissy words, Green Goblin couldn't help but explode with all his strength, knocking the weird guy away in front of him. But at this moment, a breaking wind came from behind. Green Goblin was about to turn around to block. Suddenly 2 spider cobwebs flew over and wrapped his hands, making him unable to move for a while. It turned out that it was little Spider-Man who had just recovered, struggling to endure a headache and entangled Green Goblin. "Die, monster!" Wolverine's roar came from behind. A pair of metal claws penetrated Green Goblin's chest, and then the claws staggered and tore it hard. The sharp adamantium alloy claws easily tore Green Goblin's mutated strong body, and a head flew high along with the torn-apart body. "No, this is impossible." Even so, Green Goblin was still not dead. The black mist in his eyes fluctuated violently, and even his body was constantly emitting a black mist of sulfur. "Go to hell." At this time, the steel battle suit was corroded and tattered, and finally Tony, who had all the black fog removed, rushed over, and angrily opened his palm and pointed it at Green Goblin's twisted head. Boom! At the moment when the energy torrent flooded Green Goblin's head, the lower end of the black mist was connected to Green Goblin's body and twisted and changed uncontrollably. Finally, above Green Goblin, the appearance of a humanoid with double horns was formed. Puff! The black mist dissipated, and Green Goblin's headless body fell to the ground, completely silent. "No, father!" After Green Goblin fell, Harry's hysterical shout came from the edge of the battlefield. "Father!" On a messy roadside grass destroyed by the battle, Harry hugged Green Goblin's corpse tightly surrounded by a group of medical staff and roared. Outside the police encirclement, Joe Luo is standing in a shadow and looking ahead with complicated eyes. He had actually arrived long ago, but he felt a hidden and very deep malice. He instantly understood that this is a trap against him. So he sent Wolverine and Deadpool to help, while he watched the changes. Although there were no accidents until Green Goblin died, Joe Luo could feel that the malice had not disappeared, which made him sure that this was indeed a trap. The tattered Iron Man swayed down from the air, and finally hit the grass without any danger. Although a little dizzy, but at least not seriously injured. Jarvis, why hasn't the spare steel battle suit arrived yet? Rejecting the kindness of people around him to come up to help, Tony quickly asked, "Enter." After Tony finished asking, a brand new steel battle suit rushed over from a distance and landed smoothly in front of Tony. Then, Tony put on a new steel battle suit with a sullen face, holding the most damaged steel battle suit in his hand, directly soaring into the sky and leaving. The nearby police and onlookers can only watch Tony leave, no one can stop him. After Tony also left, Joe Luo hiding in the dark finally shook his head and turned and disappeared into the shadows. Here on Green Avenue, Harry kept holding Norman Osborn's body tightly until the police nearby pulled him away. In the end, Harry could only watch his father feebly as being carried away in a car with a bag. The disposal of Norman Osborn's corpse is not something that the people here can decide. This is what the big shot above needs to deal with. After all, in addition to those high-tech armors and weapons, the situation of Norman's final mutation was also their concern. Staring blankly at the car containing his father's body disappearing in front of him, Harry sat on the ground motionless, letting the blood from the wound on his face flow down and blur his face again. The medical staff who had been standing next to Harry didn't know what to do with Harry, because he obviously didn't want any treatment. In the end, the commander here had no choice but to leave a team of police officers looking at Harry, and the others were removed. The scene of the accident will be closed for a while until the investigation is over. As for Harry, the police will not drive him away. I don't know how long it took, and Harry, who had been looking at the distance, finally blinked. Because of the long gaze, the eyes suddenly secreted a lot of tears, which blurred Harry's vision. However, just after Harry wiped away his tears, he saw a broken and bloody green demon mask on his lap, which belonged to his father. A little startled, but Harry was still slowly preparing to pick up the father's belongings. When Harry reached out and touched the mask, a strange wave spread from above to Harry. Then, Harry slowly stood up from the ground holding the mask, and then slowly left the battlefield step by step. The police officer guarding here naturally didn't stop him, so he walked towards the city covered in blood. In the middle of a quiet old street in downtown New York, there is an old building that seems to be a little old, and there was an unusual wave a few minutes ago. Definitely, this wave of fluctuation is impossible to be noticed by ordinary people. Even Joe Luo may not be able to observe this wave of fluctuation at close range. In fact, this seemingly ancient temple-like building is one of the 3 holy places guarded by the magician in Greenwich Village. Under the leadership of the powerful Ancient One magician, the magician handed down from the era of the Earth, Merlin magician has been secretly defending the Earth from the harassment and encroachment of other space hell demons. Just when Norman was killed by Peter, the black shadow on his body suddenly changed and disappeared. Magician, who has been responsible for detecting magical fluctuations around the world in the holy place in New York, suddenly detected the fluctuations. Although it was only a short moment, the magician still sounded an alarm just to be cautious. Soon, there was a wave of powerful magic waves in the holy place in New York. If someone can walk into this holy place at the moment, what he sees will surely subvert his worldview. Because, in the lobby of the holy place in New York, several revolving space doors are rapidly becoming larger. In a short while, several magicians rushed to the holy place in New York through the door of space from other places. "Hey, what happened? Are you going to summon us?" The first to walk out of the door of the space was a man with a strong Asian face. He asked in a deep tone to magician, the guardian of the holy place in New York. "Wong, everyone magician. Just a few minutes ago, holy place in New York suddenly detected a force from a hell demon, located in New York City." "No nonsense," the magician called Hay quickly told what had happened. "The power of the hell devil. Really?" This time it was not the Wong who spoke, but a slender female magician next to him asked, obviously a little surprised. "You can't go wrong, the secret demon wheel has recorded this fluctuation." Nodded, and led a few magicians to a room at the back of the hall. Then, all of them hurriedly walked into the room. Soon, there was a wave of magic waves inside. "Then it seems to be true. Do you want to contact Ancient One magician?" After seeing the wheel of the secret demon, Wong asked with a heavy tone. If it was the hell demon who broke the guardian magic quietly, then only Ancient One magician could deal with it. Although the power of the hell demon did appear, it was extremely weak, and it shouldn't have really passed through the guardian magic. And now it's gone. Maybe we don't need to disturb Ancient One magician, it's better to investigate it ourselves. Quote. After Wong said worriedly, a handsome middle-aged man beside him said with a smile. "Yes, this time the power of the hell demon is indeed very small. If it weren't for the proximity to the holy place in New York, I would not be able to sense it." Nodded, and one thought the same as this handsome guy. Glancing around, it seems that everyone feels that there is no need to disturb Ancient One magician for the time being. Therefore, Wong had no choice but to nod his head. Then send 2 magician teams to investigate according to the location pointed out by the holy place. Once the power of the hell demon is discovered, immediately notify Ancient One magician. Soon, as the magician with the highest status here, Wong quickly issued the order. Osborne's secret biological laboratory. How did it turn out? Harry asked, standing outside a room with clear glass on all sides, to a biotech person in a white coat next to him. In the glass room in front of him, 2 people were lying on the test bed without moving. It still failed. This genetic agent is too unstable. So far, there has not been a successful clinical trial. Although we have eliminated most of the side effects, its effect has been correspondingly reduced a lot, and there is basically not much therapeutic effect. Quote. Hearing what Harry said, the biologist in charge of the experiment replied with a slightly ugly face. Hearing the answer from the biologist beside him, Harry frowned slightly. The experiment continues, but the human clinical experiment is suspended until the effect is confirmed before starting the human experiment. After thinking about it, Harry said lightly, Harry is not his father, and he will not experiment with immature genetic medicines with innocent people without hesitation. Although the current Green Goblin medicine has removed most of the side effects. Moreover, Dr. Connors has also been studying genetic medicine in this area, although their research directions are different. But as long as their research is successful, it is considered a success here. Yes, Chairman. Hearing Harry's words, the biologist seemed relieved and quickly agreed. Nodded. Harry didn't say anything, then turned and left the secret laboratory. After Harry left, the scientists in this secret laboratory were once again caught in a busy experiment. The Osborn group paid them so much wages, it was not a waste of time that they could not research anything. After Harry left the laboratory, he didn't stay in the Osborn Group company building anymore, and drove away by himself. An hour later, Harry had moved away from downtown New York and came to the manor belonging to the Osborn family. Pushing away Norman Osborn's room, Harry came here for the first time after his father died. Glancing briefly at the contents of the room, Harry finally lifted his foot and walked inside. Soon, Harry walked to the innermost wall. Inside this wall was Norman's secret weapon arsenal. Reaching out and pressing something on the bookshelf on the side, the wall in front of Harry quickly cracked a crack in the middle, and then it separated automatically, revealing a door. Looking at the door in front of him, Harry's eyes flashed, and finally he stepped in. On the other hand, Joe Luo is struggling with his subordinates' doglegs to hold a staff meeting. Participants in this staff meeting are the Underground Emperor of Hell's Kitchen, and Wesley, a genius charity businessman, the spiritual leader of the Hand-to-Hand Association, Haikong Erica, who loves to do good and good deeds, and the mutant trio, Logan, Deadpool, who has no name for the time being. With John. In fact, Joe Luo refused to let Deadpool meet Wolverine at first. After all, the relationship between Deadpool and Wolverine, which is constantly being cut and messed up, everyone knows, once it is revealed, there may be something wrong with it. But later Joe Luo found out, hey, the two match up well, and they fight back to fight, and make trouble. The two of them can't get rid of each other anyway, so Joe Luo doesn't care. To be honest, Deadpool's boned-down character, getting along with Logan, the hot character Wolverine, is nothing short of torture. I didn't see that Logan's claws were exposed within 3 minutes of the meeting. The frightened poor little innocent fireman John didn't dare to get close to these two men, for fear of accidentally being injured, losing his arms, legs, or something. Cough cough, Joe Luo coughed twice, stopping the flirting of the two people, and said, okay, let's get to the topic of today, now we will report on our own duties. Wesley and Erica are in charge of Hell's Kitchen, and the other is in charge of the Hands-On Association. It can be said that they are now the two major forces under Joe Luo. Joe Luo mainly listens to the reports of the two of them. As for the three of them called Deadpool, it's purely for them to learn and feel the corporate culture and working atmosphere, very simple reasons. Everything else is normal. By the way, there is another little thing I think, boss, you may need to know about it. Wesley reported his work, and suddenly added a sentence as if remembering something. The Daredevil Matt is missing. Oh, Joe Luo was stunned for a moment. What do you mean by missing? Suddenly disappeared. You can say so, boss, Wesley frowned, the expression on his face seemed a little puzzled. I have been following your orders from the boss at the time, strictly monitoring the street heroes who have changed from evil to righteousness. Matt has been staying in his little broken house for some time recently, but he suddenly disappeared one night. Could it be that your subordinates were negligent? Impossible, boss, I sent a good hand in this matter, 3 shifts took turns, and has been shooting at Matt's house. But that night, he suddenly disappeared without a trace, with no signs. Really, this is weird. Joe Luo nodded, remembering the malice he had felt not long ago, and took his heart to this matter. Wesley, Erica, you two use all resources to find me this Matt, you must find him. Understood. The two people replied in unison. Very well, nothing else. Let's end the meeting. Joe Luo waved his hand. Logan, you 3 will stay for a while, and you will go to another place with me later. Where? Logan asked directly. Xavier School. On the flat and wide street, Two limited edition sports car roars with a styling style passed by, attracting the envy of countless car owners along the way. Wow, you said all the money you made recently was used to buy this car. My God, little brother, what do you think? So much money is enough for you to change to a hot and beautiful girl every day until the car is scrapped. Think about what kind of enjoyment it should be. But what's the use of this car now? Do you have to apply force to its exhaust pipe? Quote. Deadpool sat in the car behind, chattering about John who was driving. Also, why is that stupid big guy? Oh no, okay, he is really handsome, he can sit in the boss's car, but I can only sit here. Can you give me money? To be honest, Wade, if you can learn to be quiet, maybe now you can also be in the boss's car. John sighed helplessly, wishing to plug his ears. Shit, obviously this is because you have to drive. Obviously, 4 people can sit in the boss's car. Deadpool relentlessly debunked John's true purpose. Admit it, you just want to drive your car back to school for a show. Let your former friends envy you, fawn you, maybe you can make your former goddess embrace you with this sports car. Okay, I admit that I think so, stop talking about it, okay. John burst into tears and raised his hands in surrender. Oh my God, what are you doing? Why did your hands leave the steering wheel? Violating traffic rules is to be educated by the police uncle. They soon appeared at the entrance of Xavier School. After receiving another special welcome ceremony from Andre, the 2 sports cars drove into the campus one after another, which really attracted a large number of curious and enviable eyes. Oh my God, John, is it you? Is this car yours? John got out of the car, and suddenly someone recognized him and gave Roar a panic. Ah, it's no big deal, it's just bought with my bonus this month. John tried to pretend to be nonchalant, his heart actually blooming with joy. Yes, this is what I am after. Seeing the lively scene on John's side, Joe Luo smiled back and looked back, and walked to Professor X's office with Logan. After this time, I'm afraid that more people in this school will devote to you. No wonder you will promise John to drive by himself. Logan next to him scanned a circle of familiar schools, and his voice was full of emotions. The paradise that the professor has worked so hard to build for so long is easily destroyed by you. Heaven. No, Joe Luo smiled and stretched out a finger and shook his head. Logan, since Stryker attacked the school, you should know that this is definitely not a paradise, but it's an illusion as fragile as a bubble, isn't it? The professor's voice rang from their heads, and then the door of the professor's office slowly opened. Ah, my great professor, Joe Luo greeted him with a look of enthusiasm. It's been a long time. Look, I'm here in a hurry, and I forgot to bring some platinum gifts. Don't say these silly jokes, Joe, just tell me what you want to do this time. Well, Professor, you are still so wise. In fact, this time I came here to ask you to help find someone. My name is Johnny Blaze. I used to be a motorcyclist. You may have heard my name or knew nothing about me. I am on my way to escape, from one end of the world to the other, but no matter how far I go, some demons will never get rid of. Quote. This not-so-exciting story began many years ago. At that time, I had all the beauty in the world, family, relatives, lover. I once did 3 backflips on a motorcycle in front of 22,000 people. Well, there should be videos on the internet. You can go and watch them. People call me, Booming Johnny. Quote. Later, my father fell ill, and I did something crazy that I still think of. A demon came to me. He claimed to be Mephisto, a liar and fool who specializes in deceiving souls and depraved sinisters. Quote. Well, yes, you guessed it, I promised that ridiculous deal and signed a contract with the devil. It turns out that anyone who wants to take advantage will generally not end well. Quote. I am possessed by a spirit of vengeance. Once I smell the breath of sin, I will become a terrible monster. Hunt down all criminals and villains, take away and absorb their dirty, depraved souls. But who hasn't made any mistakes? Except for the good and bad people in this world, most of them are guys with low morals. They may not have killed people, but they must have done something disgraceful, such as telling a little lie, downloading illegally, deceiving family members, or making a prank. Quote. Perhaps these people should be punished, but the crime doesn't lead to death, does it? So I tried to suppress it, stay away from the crowd, drove that beloved motorcycle, and fled around the world. It hasn't appeared for a long time. Quote. But recently, I had a foreboding that a new Ghost Rider was born. Maybe, Mephisto will come back soon. I don't know how long I can escape. My name is Johnny Blaze, a stupid man who signed a contract with the devil. It is shouting, roaring, roaring at roar, Ghost Rider, hunting for darkness. Johnny woke up suddenly from his sleep, shaking his head dizzy. He had a dream just now, that a bald old man was talking to his soul. I don't know why he has an inexplicable sense of trust in the old man, and unknowingly tells the old man about himself. It's a strange dream. Johnny shook his head inexplicably, but the next moment, the voice of the old man in the dream sounded in his head. This is not a dream, Johnny. My name is Charles. You may or may not have heard of me. I am talking to you through telepathy. Professor X. Johnny's stunned roar in his heart. Although he had never seen Professor X, he had heard of the famous and powerful mutant. You know me, that's great, it will save a lot of time. Professor X's voice is gentle and calm. Actually, I am looking for you because of a friend's trust. He wants to talk to you. A friend? Johnny was puzzled when a young man's voice came in with a little bit of sternness. Hello Johnny, my name is Joe Luo. It sounds like an Oriental name. It's not important. The important thing is that we now have a common enemy, Johnny. On the other side of the ocean, in the big room where the brainwave strengthening device was installed, Joe Luo stood behind Professor X with one hand on the professor's shoulder, using the professor as an international long-distance call. He originally wanted Professor X to help him find Daredevil Matt or someone related to him, but he didn't expect Matt to find the Ghost Rider Johnny thousands of miles away. After Professor X talked with Johnny, Joe Luo understood it all at once. Matt is likely to become the new Ghost Rider, and the malice he sensed that day was either from Matt or simply from Mephisto, the Hell Lord. This also explains the reason why Norman Osborn ran away for no reason, being corroded by the power from hell. After sharing his guess with Johnny, the Ghost Rider, who had been hiding in the East, finally decided to come to New York. First, I saw Joe Luo, a comrade in arms, and second, the days of escape made him bored from the bottom of his heart, and he wanted to end this life. And now that Professor X is acting as the middleman, he may be able to try to trust once. After disconnecting, Joe Luo retracted his hand on Professor X's shoulder and pushed the professor out. Professor, thanks a lot this time. It's okay. With a flat smile on the professor's face, if you were really targeted by a demon like Mephisto, there may be a lot of trouble. I can recommend someone to you, and she will definitely help you. Quote. Who is it? Joe Luo is a little curious. Who can be praised by Professor X in dealing with hell demons? She is called Ancient One Magician, and she lives in Kamartaj in the Far East. The other side. After disconnecting his mental connection, Johnny splashed his face with cold water to calm his spirit, and the fighting spirit that had just been ignited invisible began to dissipate. Facing Mephisto head-on, are you really ready? Is there anyone? At this moment, a stranger opened the iron gate. Sorry to disturb you. A black man in a leather trench coat walked in. Before he could stand still, Johnny grabbed him and pressed it against the wall fiercely. Who are you? My name is Morrow, and I came here specially for you. The black man looked up with a weird look. Johnny Blaze. He looked at Johnny, who was packing up and leaving, and picked up the beer bottle on the table and threw it out. With a bang, the window shattered, and sunlight came in directly from outside the window. Johnny hid in the corner subconsciously. The vengeful spirit in his body hated the sun, so he would release it only at night. Therefore, he always took advantage of his activities during the day and hid in the dark and remote corners at night. Ghost Rider, I have heard your story. The black man said inexplicably. Do you think you can control it and let it work for you? Are you stronger than this extremely hungry guy? It is like a curse, tightly entwining you. Quote. Johnny didn't bother to pay attention to the self-talking stranger, and pushed open the iron door of the warehouse. After adapting to the sunlit environment a little bit, he was ready to ride his Yamaha Devil. Now that this place was found, it means that he should have left. For several years he has been living this kind of wandering life. I need your help. The black man caught up and shouted, let's make a deal. This way you are most familiar with it, Johnny. He took a wrinkled photo from his pocket and placed it on the car body. This child, his life and soul are in danger, you must save him. Johnny grinned and said, I only punish sinners, I don't know how to save people. Then why are you here? Johnny Blaze. The black man named Molo laughed, his eyes full of jokes. You traveled all the way from the place of birth to the other side of the earth, isn't it just for fear that you will become a ghost rider completely? All of this is the will of the gods, the curse you bear, and this child, everything starts with the contract you signed. He is Mephisto's child. Ghost Rider is best at tracking the smell of demons. Only you can find this child. Johnny heard the demon's name and his eyelids twitched. He picked up the picture and asked, what deal do you want to do with me? The monastic society I belong to is very old. It used to be a hell lord-like demon similar to Mephisto, which raged across the land of Europe. As a result, countless witches were burned to death, and the occult was relegated to heresy. It wasn't until the Holy Place magician established a Trinity magic system that these hell minions who coveted their souls were expelled. Quote, Molo belongs to a member of Holy Place, but he did not choose to become a magician, but was responsible for running for the monastic society. We have done a lot of research on the devil's contract, and we have enough ability to lift the curse for you and save the soul, as long as you bring that child. Holy Place magician is also looking for this kid, but as a ghost rider, you have an advantage. Moro said. He has seen records about Ghost Rider in the ancient books of Holy Place. Mephisto's first knight was a Texas mounted police named Cartesre. Once arrested and imprisoned for greed, he signed a contract with the devil in order to regain his freedom. The second was Johnny Blaze, the stunt driver who once made a sensation in the United States. They are all possessed by the spirit of vengeance and become ghost riders who hunt sinners and absorb souls. According to the news obtained by Holy Place magician, Mephisto, the Lord of Hell, tried to walk in the world in a new way. Freed from the imprisonment of the material world for its power, a rebirth ceremony will be held soon. And the body that carries the soul of Mephisto is the child named Danny. He is a combination of demons and mortals, like a perfect container that can contain all his power. Johnny Blaze, you have to find that kid quickly, or Mephisto will come to visit sooner or later. Moro looked serious, and as far as he knew, the third Ghost Rider had appeared. The magician of Holy Place in New York detected a strong demonic breath, but it didn't stay long. Johnny stared at the photo again, remembering the previous communication with Joe Luo, nodding hoarsely, I will find him. Hell's Kitchen, the president's office of the Rand Group. 3 months ago, Ramon, who was still an ordinary executive of the Rand Group and now the new president of the Rand Group, was talking on the phone. Okay, Mr. Wesley is in contact with Yashida Pharmaceutical. Yes, 2 months later, the Rand Group will have a research team going to Africa. Raymond's tone is respectful, and his attitude is humble as if he is about to kneel at the feet of the other party. No wonder it is often said that this Mr. Ramon was able to be supported to a high position by relying on his sloppy skills. Even if many people are jealous, and secretly spread some sour words, Ramon is still very satisfied with today's life. He knew how many caddies he had, and he could be selected by Wesley to sit on the top throne of the Rand Group. Even if it is a puppet, the life he enjoys is enough to be jealous of the guys on the same level as before. The current Hell's Kitchen is like a core of huge amounts of, and the Rand Group is the biggest transfer station of Hell's Kitchen. With all kinds of huge profits, it radiates its influence to the entire city, and then develops and grows into a huge kingdom in the underground world. So Ramon understood that as long as he was a good puppet, he wouldn't have to worry about money for the rest of his life. Ramon Phillips. A hoarse voice awakened him directly. Almost subconsciously, he raised his hand and wanted to ring the alarm bell under the table. The owner of the voice rushed out of the shadows quickly, and then with a click, he snapped Raymond's arm neatly. The intruder directly removed Raymond's chin to prevent the opponent from howling. Ramon whimpered in pain, trying to see clearly what the attacker looked like. What appeared in the line of sight was a tall demon that melted into the dark shadow. An overlapping double D pattern is drawn on the chest, like scarlet blood, dazzling and eye-catching. There are demon horns on the head, and those eyes that emit indifferent gazes through the hood look like fire rolling, giving people a kind of invisible pressure. Ramon Phillips, you colluded with James Wesley to understand all illegal business in Hell's Kitchen. The tall demon forcibly held Raymond's head and looked at each other with his eyes that seemed to be burning. Tell me everything you know, those sordid and bloody crimes, the countless evil deeds you have committed, confess them all. I don't know anything. Ramon felt like he was suffocating, but he still didn't dare to say anything. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.